All right, we'll start a little early here. I don't want to wait till 2 o'clock. So, hey, welcome, buddy. Yeah, I'm doing it through Discord. I don't want to get all prettied up today. It is Saturday. Been a hell of a long week. Not the happiest camper in the world because of a million things that are freaking been going on. Plus, like everybody else, we're cooped at home. Haven't been able to go anywhere. Haven't seen my daughter. Had to go shopping the other day. What a joyous experience that was. But that's about the only time I ever get out anymore, obviously, because I am doing the socially responsible thing and I'm socially distancing myself, which is basically my normal routine. But before I at least had the option to go out. Now I do not. Anyways, so I got Michael, the Canadian Atheist, in here. You guys might remember him from the podcast that we've done a few times on his channel. I think I've been on there, was it twice? I know it's been at least
times,
twice.
Brother. Three times.
Okay, 3 times. Yeah, I thought it was 3 times. Okay. But anyways, he wanted to talk a little bit about new atheism, and it should be actually new atheism TM. I forgot to put the TM in the title. Oh well. But one of the reasons we brought this up is that I was in a Facebook group the other day, and I had just joined it. Somebody had messaged me that they were just a bunch of idiots over there, and they were treating him pretty harshly when he was talking about some of the arguments that I had. So I joined it. And found out he was exactly right. I mean, there was actually some admins that I knew, and there were a few cool ones. I mean, another Michael friend, he's an admin over there. He was really cool. And a few other people that I know. So I'm not trying to have a hasty generalization that everybody over there was an idiot, but a lot of their admins were fucking stupid. They didn't understand the very basics of logic and reason, and didn't understand anything about the topic of atheism, even though they thought they did. And they argued by the same reasoning that I've seen many of the new atheists argue. And what I mean by new atheist is the ones that generally follow the Four Horsemen of Daniel Dennett, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, and Samuel Harris. So, I mean, not to disparage those guys in any way, but there's just something about new atheists that tend to just be atheists because of what they read from the writings of those people. I mean, they don't even read their papers, right? You never see anybody cite a paper by Dawkins or cite a paper by Harris. What you do is just you say, oh, let's read the Moral Landscape or something, or the Selfish Gene. So they're very, modern day nouveau type, postmodernist type atheist, I think, in some ways. And I just noticed there was some qualities about almost all of them that seem ubiquitous. And as other people pointing out, by changing a few things that I noticed, you could actually apply these same things to flat earthers. You can apply them to young earth creationists. You can apply them to very left-wing progressives, maybe even right-wing regressives. But yeah, so Michael, he's like I said, the owner and operator and host of the Canadian podcast. So he wanted to talk to me about, again, new atheists. And we want to differentiate once again that it's not all atheists, right? I mean, I know a lot of atheists. They're cool people. I'm supportive of them. But this little subdivision, right? This little, I guess, American Atheist Republic and Atheist Community of Austin, even within that group, I wouldn't even say it's all of them. It's just in that group, there's these new atheists. And we were going to talk about that for a little while. We are on Discord. You can come on in. The link is in the video description. It should be active. If not, I can put it in the live chat. But yeah, I got some other people in here too. But hey, Michael, it's been a while, man. It hasn't been that long. What's up, man?
Well, it's only been a couple of weeks, and I should say that that while I kind of take the lead, I suppose, on the CA. I do it with my very good friend Dean, who hasn't been able to be around for the times you've been on.
Yeah, but, I was going to say he wasn't on the time I was on. The times I was on. Yeah.
But I do it with Dean. He's the voice of reason.
No, the second one was he on the second one?
That's right. He was on the second.
He was the second one. He wasn't on the first or the third, right? Yeah.
That's when you and Chesh were both on.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah. So, but the whole social distancing thing has made it difficult, and he's got young kids, and kids are in everything. So. It's I say that always in jest.
I know I haven't been able to see mine. She's well though. I make sure she's healthy almost every morning. I contact her and I was like, "You're not sick yet, right?"
Yeah, it's the same. My daughter's in her 20s, and so it's just try to do the responsible thing as a parent, and and life goes on. But it's really this whole thing. I've watched you take a beating over the past long while. Over this. And so I put out a post. I put a post yesterday after seeing some of the fodder that have been going around, basically, and the post is on, anybody can go onto Facebook and find me. It's just Michael Stewart, as you see it in the Discord. Last name's Stuart. I'll add just about anybody. the friends list numbers keep fluctuating depending on what I post, because I can be fairly outlandish at times. But basically, I put a post out there saying, am I the only, as an atheist, am I the only one who's not threatened by Steve McRae's arguments? Some people came on and jokingly said, who the fuck is Steve McRae?
And then I jokingly said, I don't know, and I'm him.
Exactly. There's some people coming on and posting stuff like that. I was active for a little bit, and then I took the night off. I spent some quality time with my lovely wife, and I came back this morning to 100+ comments, and I was like, Jesus fuck. And so I put a long comment in there today, basically. And so I guess, one of the things that I said I wanted to talk to you about is this whole, the whole quote unquote new atheist thing. And so I tried to do some of my due diligence, and I looked up exactly what, new atheist is in the IEP. And what she said is 100% right. It's basically, these, people who I want to almost say deify some of these, followers from the horsemen.
They make it very religious. And I hate saying that, because atheism is not a religious, but I have been convinced now, people have actually made these arguments, that there is an overtone of religious overtones with certain types of atheists that follow these dogmatic types of things. I think they're right. And I really don't see a difference. Yeah. So they do kind of deify them.
I'm not sure I disagree with you either, but I think that you'll find different people behaving different ways, of course.
Sure. Yeah. I'm the first
one to say. Yeah, I'm the first one to say that. I've said it before. We've talked about it on the podcast a bunch of times. I lament not meeting Christopher Hitchens. He influenced me a lot in my thought process, and some of the books that he's written and stuff like that, and all the YouTube debates that he's done.
Brilliant. Yeah, he's a brilliant debater, no question about it.
Yeah. But then on the flip, and when I was coming out, like in that long post that I put towards the bottom, it's quite lengthy. When I first came out of my faith, that was the first thing that I saw, when I start to do atheist stuff, is you see people like Dawkins, you see people like, the Four Horsemen and stuff like that. I've read some of their books, and some of them I don't agree with. Like Sam Harris wrote Free Will. I don't agree with it. I understand the science behind it, and I understand that I might be wrong, but I don't necessarily agree with it. But I guess I should pull it back a little bit. You think atheist versus this, kind of new atheist thing. And we've talked about this at length and ad nauseum about this whole thought process, that there's this, almost cult-like feeling. And I use the word cult very cautiously, because, like you said, there are lots of people who are much more even-keeled when it comes to the whole process of it. But when I first came out, one of the first things I found the Four Horsemen. I found the Atheist Experience, and tons of videos. It was so easy to get kind of lost in their wormhole of what they were talking about, and they had 15 years of videos that I could go through, and I kind of got lost in that a little bit. And I bought into, because I was new to it, I bought in. And again, we can talk about some of the terminology I've used, and can be triggering, I think, to some people. But I bought into this. Well, I just don't believe this is God. I just don't believe it. And I clung on to that for a long time. One, it was easy, and I can admit now that there were times when I was lazy throughout my process of deconversion and going through the whole learning process of more about atheism and everything else like that. But it was easy. Right. And I would watch, shows, and I would look at the blogs and all those other things and say, like, well, all they ever do is say, what you believe and why, and give me your argument. I don't buy your argument. And there were times, some of the hosts were more honest interlocutors than others. I think that's fair to say. But there was this whole thing. It was just like, give me your pitch. I don't believe that. Give me your pitch. I don't believe that. And it always seemed like there were all these religious folks and believers of different flavors who were coming on and giving this pitch and everything else like that. And the only thing the other person said in the line was, "Yeah, I don't believe that. Do you have anything else?" And it wasn't until I saw what you put out there, this whole, and I commented on that, this, atheists and their burden of proof. I looked at that paper, I read it, and I said in the post that I do, I crumpled it up and threw it over my shoulder. This is bullshit. And then I actually took the time to read it. And then you and I talked about it. And like I said, I changed my mind. And now I feel almost like this degree of freedom that I'm not locked into that same type of mindset anymore. And I took some time to formulate some arguments, and I have 3. And anyone that asks me, I'll tell them what they are. And that is how I've come to the conclusion that more in line with the philosophical definition of what an atheist is. And I accept that there are different definitions, and people will say, well, if you look at the dictionary this. Yes, fine, cool. But if you open yourself up to a broader range of thinking, then you start to see that there's more out there than just a dictionary. And that's one of the things you did for me. And I both like and appreciate and curse you for, because now my brain hurts when I read some of this philosophical stuff. But
a lot more out than you expected. Yeah, anyway. Dictionaries are just descriptive, right? I mean, that's why people don't understand. You're just looking at one possible polysemous use of a word, which is very, very limited. I mean, you don't. If you're a doctor, do you go to a dictionary for medical words? No, you go to a medical dictionary. You go to encyclopedia.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's no different for philosophy, by the way.
And so now when I'm talking to people, I'll say, and I've said lots of times, I'll say to anyone that ever asked me about it, so I'm like, you know what, you can call yourself whatever you want, define what you are, whatever you want, and I'll address you accordingly. This particular sword is not one I'm prepared to throw myself on and say, no, it's my way or the highway. Look, the dictionary says this, and that's all we need to look at. There are people within the groups that you named, American Atheists, Atheist Experience, etc. Even Armin Navabi from Atheist Republic, who I like a lot, and I consider him a friend. Who are very kind.
He blocked me. And I have no idea why. We got along really well, and they derided me in the Atheist Republic group, and just found a way to remove me because I was too much of a challenge for them. And I talked to Navabi, and he was all yeah, I think, because even he thought the admins did. They went beyond what they should have done. But after he was like, he talked to all his admins, and next thing I know, he blocked me, and I'm like, okay, whatever, man.
Pretty that does surprise me, because I have found him to be. I met him at Imagine No Religion 7 a bunch of years ago.
I was fine with him. He was cool with me, and he said he would talk to the admins, and he did. He had a meeting with them, and then instead of getting back to me, he blocked me, and the other admins kind of told me about the meeting. But a lot of the admins some of them actually left. They were that pissed.
You know what might have happened? They may have turned on him and threatened to remove him from his position, accusing of being a toady or acolyte, like the nonsense I was hearing from my other admins last night.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of different things. One, for example, Michael, on your post real quick last night, it was kind of funny because there was two people on that thread, and one of them asked me, well, what are some of the arguments? Because you had posted why are new atheists afraid? Why are atheists afraid of Steve's arguments? And one of them said, "What is arguments?"
You did a mental vomit, like you put. Duh. It was like, bleh. You want to know what my arguments are? Here they are.
No, I asked him. I said, what scale do you want? Do you want one from very simple? I have a lot of arguments, and by the way, the fact that you have new arguments now means you're adding to the dialogue, right? When people become atheists, or they lose their faith, or whatever, or at least join the community, most of them are not adding to the body of work, right? They're just parroting what they've heard. You've now reached the stage where you've transcended, right? And you've now said, look, I want to not only be able to explain these things to people, I want to add to the arguments with my own arguments, good, bad, or indifferent. It really doesn't matter. If they're bad arguments, you just make them better. If they're good arguments, people talk about them. But at least you're trying, right? That's more than what I see from these other people. But I'd asked him, do you want a simple or 5? He's like, we'll make it like an 8, 9, whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you some of my harder ones. So I vomited, right? I threw out my entire shtick on a couple blogs that I had. Did he? Now here's on record on your Facebook. Did he or that other guy even bother, or this other girl, Autumn? Did any of them bother to even address the argument, or even try to articulate the argument in a way that was explainable to anybody else?
I didn't get that feeling. I feel like they had an emotional reaction to what seemed like a simple question to them, and instead of just answering it, which would have taken one post, they got mad that they even got asked the question, and decided to take it from an emotional standpoint rather than actually having a conversation.
Looked at it as almost like a dodge, because basically what one of them said, I don't remember who it was now. Apologies if you're listening, watching, whatever. But one of the responses was basically like, it was almost like a shot. It was like nice cut and paste, like you had just taken it off some other website that you found.
I didn't understand that, whether he meant that or not. I mean,
yeah,
because obviously it was a cut and paste, but it was for my own work.
It was your own blog, yeah, it's a cut and paste. But so what?
But yeah, but
it's not. It's cut and paste of work you've already done.
Yeah, because he didn't ask me for a new argument. He didn't give me a new novel de novo argument. He's like, give me one of your arguments. Okay, here it is. Isn't that exactly what he asked for?
I don't think he realized it was your blog, and he just went with the typical, like, the kind of shit that a lot of people in the woo world will respond to if you show them a Snopes article or a Wikipedia link. They'll just go to the knee-jerk, you can't cite Wikipedia.
Yes, that's what I wasn't sure. He didn't make it clear, and I even had tagged Sweet in, and I was like, Sweet, what do you read into this? Because he said the word plagiarized. I was like, well, technically you can plagiarize yourself. That is possible in a college paper. We're not running a college paper. And he asked me for my argument, but I kind of assumed that he realized it was my argument. So I'm not trying to plagiarize it. I'm not trying to pass my own work off as my own work. It's my own work, you know?
Yeah. And from the professional point of view, the only reason they treat that as plagiarism is that you're supposed to cite your past work because it was published. That's like they want that paper.
But mine wasn't published, so
exactly.
Yeah.
So like in the context of what the discussion was, that wouldn't have applied.
Yes, exactly. And by the way, so this is what like the other Michael that said like the good admin. But you can tell you can't because I want you to get in trouble. But I'll mention the name of the group because I'm no longer in the group. But it was Atheist versus Theists, the Great Debate. Which is not related to the Great Debate community, obviously. But again, these groups do not want to have anybody in there that challenges them in any way, shape, or form. They do not know how to answer the questions because, like the other Michael said, when they just become an atheist and they just start learning about these things from the Four Horsemen, they don't have the skill set to address any of these types of questions. They don't. And so there is this Pavlovian knee-jerk reaction. They all go through it. Now, what happens after that Pavlovian knee-jerk reaction is one of two things. They come to the realization there might be more to it. They want to learn. They change their position, or they entrench themselves. I don't really see much in the middle where, it's one or the other. They either get worse or they learn and then they go become an acolyte, as Michael, the other Michael found out, right? Because I guess if you agree with me, you're a toady. Is that right?
Well, they didn't make the accusation to me. At least because I was being diplomatic in my response to them and just saying, like, I disagree with the decision that was made, and pointed out a couple places where I guess I could see that maybe with a certain twist, you could see that as an insult, which technically is against our rules, but that rule was mostly
Michael, I had an admin tell me I could shove my claim up my ass, and then two other admins said that wasn't a personal attack. I'm sorry, you tell me to shove something up my ass? My ass is attached to me. That makes it personal. They don't even understand basic reasoning.
I get that. No, and I helped them, formulate and write some of these rules, and a couple of years ago. And my impression of the no insult rule was not that being rude was against the rules, because we're frequently rude to theists for being belligerent and dumb. It was mostly about people using an insult as a substitute for a response.
Right. There's a difference. Right? I have the same rule in the Great Debate Community Facebook group because I have my own group on Facebook in the video description. And like Cy Gart, one of my really good friends, he left the group because I couldn't. I had a poll: do we have the ability to insult and use invectives and pejoratives and curse? And the poll was they kind of wanted that, but to a certain amount of limitations, right? Well, Cy doesn't like that kind of style, and I don't fault him for that, right? So he didn't want to stick around, and I don't blame him at all. But I would love to have him in the group because I really like Cy, but it's moderated, right? If somebody just says, "Hey, your argument sucks and you're an idiot," that's ad hominem, right? If you say you're wrong because you're an idiot, that's an ad hominem fallacy. But if you just say, "Hey, look, don't be stupid because you're this, and this, and you explain it," I'm not going to give a shit about that, right?
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm not going to waste my time. We're all fucking adults, right? But that's just how I run that group. I mean,
the way I had understood it, which may not, possibly my understanding was wrong, and I'll be corrected by them if that's the case, but my understanding of the intent of that was that one of two things would have to happen for it to be violated. One was you're just using, repetitive insults in like a juvenile sense and not actually responding. And the other one being that you're just making like horrendously mean-spirited insults that would make someone genuinely feel bad knowingly. Being condescending wouldn't fit the bill there. So even if their accusation against you about that was true, it still doesn't quite fit the way that we've been applying it in the past.
Yeah. And here's the thing. What it was there was a member that had made a false statement. I explained in great detail why that statement was false. And I explained one defeater makes a statement or proposition false, right? It only takes one. That's this basic logical 101. If you say all cars are blue and you find a red car, that statement is false, right? So I explained to her in no uncertain terms that what she said was the statement was false. She couldn't handle that, and she had no rebuttal, no rejoinder, no nothing. And I kept when I'm on Facebook, I hit reply to the person I'm replying to, and I'm not going to sit there and edit it out every time. It's a waste of my time. You message me, I'm going to reply to you back. And so she's like, stop tagging me. I'm like, well, don't answer me then. I'm just hitting reply. But the last time I was like, fine, and I did it. But the last time I removed her name and I didn't tag her, I got a timeout by one of the mods. Okay, fine, 24 hours, whatever. But then the other mod, and who I guess owns the channel, says, well, I'm just going to remove him from the group. Okay, fine, you can do what the fuck you want. But it is just evidence, again, that these people do not have the fucking intelligence and the experience to handle anybody that dares question their narrative. This is why it's no different to me than religiosity. It is a dogmatic, ideological approach to atheism that is based upon misinformation, falsities, and outright, I would say, contradictions and category errors, and they don't know how to address any of them.
I can say with KR in particular, the perception that you were doing unwanted tagging was primarily his trigger point. He has had that exact response to that kind of thing in the past. So at least in respect,
you're supposed to get 3 warnings.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying that's for him. I read the very rules. Consistent behavior.
Yeah, I have an admin saying, read the rules. I read the rules, and it says 3 warnings, and then it also says that the admins could violate the rules at any time for any reason. Which, by the way, I get, right? I don't have a problem with that. I am the owner and admin of the Great Debate community, and the buck stops there. I can remove anybody I want for any reason. My admins pretty much have carte blanche to do the same. But of course, there needs to be some justification. I mean, if somebody says I remove this person because I don't like them, I'm probably going to say, well, that's just tough shit, right? But if they say, hey, you know what, they were just being annoying, and they didn't add anything to the dialogue, I'm going to be like, okay, whatever. Because I don't have a big group, and it is my group. I make that very clear. But that group that you're in has like 50 admins. I started a little bit of a minor debate in the admin chat, and obviously I can't divulge the full contents of it without breaking confidence. Sure. But I'm not the only one on your side there. There's a couple of other people who, despite admitting that they don't like you very much, kind of felt like the response was too much. Well, it's funny because I'm in 40 plus Facebook groups, and it's a lot of the same members, right? And even the ones that don't like me, at least they realize that you can't go around silencing people merely because you disagree. I have people on my Facebook page I can't stand, but I'm not going to remove them because I don't like them, although I have every prerogative to. But I try not to. Now, when they get past a certain point, then yes, I remove. I removed like 2 people the other day, and I asked them very clearly, stop using things like for argumentation. Well, you're Sky Daddy, or prove you're God. I'm like, that's not raising the level of conversation. And when people are asking you questions, all you do is have these invectives back to them. That's not productive. Please stop doing it. They wouldn't. I remove them. But that's, I think, a fair removal. I try to be fair. I really don't like to be arbitrary, and so. I have people in the groups that I don't like, but at least if they didn't break any rules or they're, not harming anybody, then I don't see any reason to remove them, right? But like I said, it's his group. He can run it any way he wants, but people are noticing when you have shitty admins. People are noticing when these groups are shitty, and they don't get much traffic in them.
It's funny. I belong to most of the same groups, I think, and I don't post in them a lot. I'll go and I'll look and I'll see if something's interesting. But it's a rarity. I want to go back a second to what you said a minute ago, Steve, and you were talking about how these people aren't elevating the conversations and the other thing, or they're not smart enough to understand some of the arguments. And I think that's where part of it. And I know you're not attacking people and saying, oh, you're too stupid to understand, but I think I think that's where some people are getting triggered by this.
They should be getting triggered by it. And I do it for a reason, right? Because look, smart is not a matter of what you know, what you don't know. Smart is recognizing that you don't know a lot, and wanting to learn something. Somebody to me who says you're wrong by Fiat merely because you're wrong and your name is Steve, and I'm not going to address your argument. I'm not even going to try to articulate your argument. I'm not going to try to learn about your argument. I'm just going to say that you're wrong. To me, is stupid. That is a stupid person. It's not because they don't know anything. It's because the attitude they have when you are faced with those kinds of arguments. When somebody gives me an argument I don't understand, you know what I tell them? I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. I don't understand it, and I move the fuck on. Right? I can't evaluate an argument I don't understand. Because I get that. To me, I think that is a necessity of somebody who is a little bit smarter than your average person who says, "Oh, I don't understand it, ergo you must be wrong." I don't find that to be smart.
Well, no, I mean there were lots of things, and I think it's. The first person I heard say it was to talk about him again was Christopher Hitchens. When he said during a debate, he said, I've always viewed the mark of an intelligent person is when they understand how much they don't know.
Yeah, well, dude, like I said, 7 years ago, I was philosophically naive, and I'm the first person to admit I was that guy, right? I was that person who shat on philosophy, and I hit that point where I was like, man, I don't know fuck all about philosophy, and I need to learn some of this stuff.
One of the other things that I wanted to talk about was, and I put this in my post as well, is for the overwhelming majority, we have people who, and you're agnostic, that's fine. The other Michael in here, I'm not sure where you fall on the spectrum.
According to Steve's,
he just said you're on the spectrum. He just said you're on the spectrum. Oh, sorry.
Well, I literally am, so it's fine.
Yeah, I know. Honestly.
Anyway, as far as your normative philosophical way of handling the term, I'm definitely in the agnostic group.
Cool. Yeah.
Mostly due to an agnostic approach that I wouldn't say that I'm naive to the term, which is what people often take away from that. There's enough there to attempt to wrap your mind around it, but it's still too vague to really make an argument either way coherently. So it's sort of in between the naive and knowledgeable point, but not quite over the bar.
Yeah, I like Michael. I like Michael's approach a little bit. I mean, I don't take his approach, and I'm not a fan of agnosticism. But if somebody's going to be an agnostic, at least he can articulate it. And he knows the terms, and he understands the concepts. That to me is 99% of the battle right there, right?
Yeah.
So
when it comes to specific God claims, it's a different animal, because then they start getting specific enough that you can either test the claim or argue about it, and it either becomes internally incoherent or just fails falsification outright.
And I think that's where I kind of jump over the line and call myself just an atheist. And people say, I once upon a time I would, and if you go back far enough into my Facebook posts, you'll see me posting Dawkins' scale. You'll find that for sure, because once upon a time I used to think that was credible, but.
It depends on your approach. Like if you're thinking about it in terms of confidence levels, then it's not that bad of a metric, but it's not the only way to think about it.
Oh, absolutely not. And so one of the things that I like to kind of talk about, and this is one of the things that I want to mention, and then feel free to everybody else to kind of take over, is we have these people, like whether you're an agnostic or not, you're pretty sure the Earth isn't 6,000 years old, and you're pretty sure that an axe head can't float.
I'm more than
and
pretty
then
sure.
a dead Jude and
I'm pretty sure that. I mean, I would say that I have knowledge that the Earth is not 6,000 years old, and of course,
I'm saying that I'm saying it tongue in cheek. Yeah. I'm saying it tongue in cheek. And you're pretty sure that a dead Jew didn't come back to life. And so these are the things that all of us, whether you call yourself an atheist, a new atheist, or anything, or kind of anywhere within that quote unquote spectrum, we agree on those things, and the royal we as a community. I think we have more in common, and it seems like we're fighting. In my opinion, I'll only speak for myself. In my opinion, we're fighting over this dumb, petty shit. When we have a quote unquote enemy, and I have lots of religious friends and faithful friends, and of course I don't consider them enemies. But we have this common enemy who is looking to restrict the rights of women, do all these horrible regressive things, and we are infighting. And I think that's taking away from the common ground that we all share. When all of us, whether we want to say new atheist or atheist, can look at that other group of people and say, they're wrong.
I disagree a little
They're
bit.
just flat wrong.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit. Let me explain why. Because
Fine, yeah.
I think the infighting in some ways is good because it's self-policing, and it provides a more intelligible way for some of the atheists to provide better argumentation for their arguments against the exact same people that you're talking about, right? When you have people that are going against theists and they're running the dumbest arguments you've ever heard in your life, and you look at them and you go, I don't want this person in my group. I don't want to be in the same category as a non-theist with this person, because they're just so. I mean, look at like T. Jump's Epistemology. I mean, anybody in the right mind could listen to him and go, yeah, this is just outright dumb, right? I mean, it doesn't take a lot.
I'm not qualified from a philosophical perspective to evaluate.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be. I mean, do you think rocks have moral agency? Do you think a rock, if a rock hits you in the head, that rock is being immoral? Probably most people are going to go
rock bottom.
Yeah, most people are going to go, no, that's stupid. Yeah, because it's stupid.
Yeah.
You don't have to understand moral, epistemology or ontology to do it. Well, wait, what? But so when you talk about the infighting, I give atheists basically a better framework to work from. I give them more tools in their tool belt, and the ones that have taken advantage of it, I guess I am being subjective here, but in my opinion, I've seen them become better at argumentation. I've seen them become better interlocutors. I've seen them understand topics that they probably wouldn't have never understood before. I mean, look at how many people now can argue against Darth Dawkins. Before, when he came on the scene, people didn't know what the hell to make of him, right? And then myself and Floyd PFP and Ozzy and Bert Poole and Malpass and a whole bunch of other people, Jack Angstrike, Rational Nihilist, even Godless Girl, by the way, who was supposed to join me here, I think, later on tonight. We all were like, let's show people how to argue against presuppositionalism, right? And that gave atheists a better tool set to go, yeah, okay, now we understand why, Darth Dawkins' arguments are shit. Although it's not easy, because he likes to try to confuse atheists. He likes to make atheists look stupid. And that's nothing I don't like that. I don't want to make people look stupid. What I want them to recognize is they're being stupid when they say stupid shit. Like somebody on my Facebook page just a minute ago said something really fucking stupid. They're like, well, why worry about your channel? And, it's first world problem. You should get over it. I'm like, okay, $30,000 to you may not be a big deal, but $30,000 to me is a lot of fucking money that I worked on a channel for a year and a half. So that to me is a stupid comment, right? So I do point out stupid things, but I'm not trying to make somebody feel stupid if they don't understand stuff. Big difference.
And
I think something. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But just to finish that point, I think the difference is where I may have misspoken is that
so this dumbass is saying because there's a bigger issue going on in the world, that suddenly you're supposed to stop defending yourself.
Yeah, it's called a fallacy of relative privation. And this is again, I try to explain fallacies because the fallacy of relative privations. There's a fallacy to worse problems, a lot of people don't know that fallacy, but it is a fallacy. Jens van Brockenhoven for £2 heart. Thank you, Jens. We do appreciate that very much. So it's been, by the way, it's been rough for everybody in the on the YouTube community. It's not just the people that have lost their jobs. The YouTube content creators have been hit pretty hard too. So we're all struggling, so anybody who donates, I'm even more appreciative than I ever have been, because I know that it's rough right now for people, and I am very grateful for the people that are subbing, that are Patreons, that are members. I thank every one of them. I talk to anyone that messages me. I always try to get back to somebody. If they leave me a message on Patreon, I don't think there's been a single person I haven't gotten back to. If there has been, let me know. But I do try to get back to anybody who messages me. So, which can be very time consuming sometimes. What's that?
For sure. Well, we have lots of people. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, you were waiting. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. For sure.
I just wanted to add on to something Steve said, how it was like an appeal to relative priorities. This same person he's talking about was complaining about Joe Rogan endorsing Bernie Sanders. So that's apparently important enough for him to complain about.
Yeah, I don't care who he endorses. I would go for Bernie over the other.
Just to touch on this for a second, it's kind of dumb YouTube's response of like, hey, go contact the guy that you literally had to fight a court case because he refused to respond.
I'm gonna have a separate video on that because I'm gonna do.
Yeah, that's dumb.
I'm
That's
probably
dumb on a level I haven't seen in a while.
That's going to be my rum and coke night tonight. We're going to talk about that because I had contacted YouTube a few times, and they basically said we just need to contact the person who committed fraud. I'm like, so
well, you literally had to bring him to court over it because he wouldn't respond.
I was like, so you got raped. Go talk to your rapist. I'm a victim here, and they want me to talk to the person who victimized me. That's brilliant. But anyways, that's going to be for rum and coke night tonight. We're going to have that later on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think on the other side, we have these people, who are in this, quote unquote movement that, Steve, you and I have talked about this, and we, absolutely respect the fuck out of, who are, people like Aaron Ra, right? Who take this very hardline stance and who will, stomp their feet in the ground saying, this is what it means. That's all there is to it. Period, end of sentence. It's in his book. It's on so many videos.
It's dogmatic.
All these other things, which is fine. And so, from my stance, it's just like, well, okay, and that's what I said before when I said, hey, this is not a sword I'm necessarily prepared to throw myself on, because I think we have, a lot of things in common as well. And so I think that there has to be room within this for, I don't know. Is it naive to say agree to disagree? I'm not sure.
Oh no, I'm fine with that.
And move on.
But they don't.
And move on.
They don't. Here's the thing: they have vilified me. They've excoriated me. They've dragged me. They have made the most ridiculous accusations about me. They have lied about my positions, and I do say lie very specifically because they know my positions. I've explained to them positions, and they still continue to get them wrong. I'm going to put that under deception, dishonesty, and lying when you know something is not the case, but you decide to say it anyways. I see that happen quite frequently. Now, I'm not going to put that to Aaron. I'm not going to say Aaron's lied because he's not the one I'm talking about here. But Aaron is very dogmatic. He has actually said that if I am right, his entire life work is for naught, which I think is absurd. He has been told if it doesn't change anything, if Steve's right, you might just want to accept it and then move on and just say, well, yeah, Steve's right on this, but we don't use it this way. We use it this way, and let me explain why we use it this way. I'm probably not going to waste my time having a discussion with that because I don't care. I'm like, okay, fine. I don't have.
Honestly,
whatever. That's
honestly,
fine.
in the context they're using it, for the most part, they're not stepping on epistemic terminology because they're not really using epistemology directly in the way that you
political.
are.
They're being political. Is what it is. It's politicizing. Yeah. And I'm not going to step in the arena of politics in that regard unless they want me to. They say, well, if they say, Steve, why do you think this will help with demographics? Do you think this will help with political gain? Then I could answer that question and we can have a conversation about it. But they don't ask me that, and I've never really weighed in on it that much. Do I think that it helps? Not in the long run. I think it's a short-term solution. But that's their goal. If that's their utility, whether, like, for example, genetically modified skeptic and I had that discussion, and that's his position. I mean, he talks about it from political demographics, and he makes a pretty decent argument for it. This is why I don't dog on GM Skeptic, because he understands it. He has a different approach that he can articulate, and he can argue for it. He doesn't say I'm wrong. He doesn't sit there and berate me, and he doesn't, argue against things I can demonstrate. Why would I have a problem with that, right? That's the difference, right?
Fair point.
Yeah. I have a thought about this.
Your first thought. Yay, come on.
I got one.
My first thought. Then we're gonna make that into videos. Just kidding.
I hit the clicker. I'm at one now.
Okay. Yes.
All right. So here's my thought. Okay. This is how I see how my journey through atheism, agnosticism has been. I think I'm guilty of what I'm about to accuse them of doing before. I think this is a whole lot of just general laziness. I think that there was a point where people would actually have to find good sources, find information, find out why things are the way they are, not just who says what this guy says and then just that's good. This guy said that, good. I don't have to know why. He just said it. I can repeat it. Good. And that might be great for little snippets, memes and stuff that might get more people to join your order, which I guess that's what they're going for. But when you say things like we don't have burden of proof, you're telling everybody under your umbrella to stop thinking critically. You don't need to. You don't even have to think at all.
Yeah, I think
you
exactly
can just
right.
say, I'm burden proof.
Good
so
point.
Suddenly
yes,
we have all these people who are thinking that they're as smart as the Four Horsemen, and they couldn't think their way out of a paper bag. and that's basically new atheism.
Yeah, no, I think exactly right. It is intellectually laziness. Like I said, when I had, there's a, I don't know who she is very much. Her name's Autumn. She's on the Facebook your page, and she's like, well, I know about epistemology, I know about logic. Okay, fine. Again, I only have a very tertiary understanding of some of these topics, right? I mean, my thing was science basically, so philosophy was not my main thing. So I have a rudimentary, basic level of understanding that I think is probably more than most lay people, but I'm certainly not going to put myself up against an academic on the what they know. But if somebody says I have a basic understanding of something, it doesn't matter what the topic, I'm going to take that to mean that they have some kind of basic understanding, right? You tell me you have a basic understanding of logic, which this person did, and you don't know what modus ponens is, I'm not sure you understand logic. If you say you know epistemology and you don't know even what epistemology means, you don't know what a belief is, you don't know what a proposition is, this is going to confuse me what you mean by you have a basic knowledge, right? But anyway,
or if they use the word valid where they should be using the word sound.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked them. I said, well, you said you took logic courses, and I gave them a very valid syllogism. And I just asked them, all you got to do is tell me yes or no. Is this valid? And they couldn't even do that. They had no idea. And so this is I don't like to sharpshoot. I'm not trying to sharpshoot anybody because, again, I don't like to be sharpshooted, and I'm not going to play that game. But if somebody says I have a basic level of understanding and you ask them something very, 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 very simplistically, I mean, not hard questions, right? Because I'm not going to ask anybody a hard question. I'm not going to sharpshoot. That's just stupid. But if you say, hey, look, I've taken basic math and I say 1 + 1 = and you say 6, I'm going to be questioning what you mean by having a basic understanding, right? Right. So she was less like saying my arguments were wrong. And when I'm asked, well, what do you mean by this? She's again, dictionary. And I'm like, what does that have to, I am arguing, somebody actually pointed this out. They're like, Steve's arguing logic and you're bringing up semantics. Do you understand there's a problem here? She's like, well, there's semantics and logic. Well, yeah, but we're not talking about that kind of semantics. You're talking words, right? Words and meanings, which I have no relevancy in my arguments whatsoever. I could define dog to be, a four-legged animal, or I can say anybody who's any animal that's breathing is a dog. I can do anything I want if it's my own argument. And it's a matter of just signifier. That's just a word, right? It still makes the argument valid. Now, if you want to question soundness, sure, go ahead. But it's still, if I say dogs are anything that breathes, Steve breathes, therefore Steve's dog, that's a valid syllogism, right? I mean, okay, it's valid. But if you can't even recognize it's valid, then why are we having a conversation about logic then, right? But she didn't understand that. And
I'm not even sure if she understood it or was just being belligerent about being asked the question, refusing to participate.
What's the difference at that point? I mean,
it doesn't matter from your perspective. Right. You wouldn't be able to tell.
Yeah, that's why I'm not going to have a conversation with that kind of person. And I don't think she understood.
She was taught to know that you were wrong, but not know why. So she had no idea what you were talking about, but she knew to say that you were wrong.
Yeah, exactly. The Dillahunty approach. Steve's wrong because reasons.
It's interesting because this is where I jump in and say, I have no shame. I don't understand what you're saying to me. Can you please explain it to me? And that's where the I think it was a 3 a.m. philosophy paper that you did on the atheist and their burden of proof was very eye-opening for me, because it was the first time that I saw something outside of that, to use your word, I don't 100% agree with it, but I'll use your word, dogmatic arena. It was the first thing that I saw.
Because nobody's ever explained it that way before that I've ever seen.
And when I saw it, I was at first, and so I understand what you say when you say people are threatened by this, because at first I thought I was threatened. I was like, this is tricky. I'm gonna have to do more here. I'm going to have to read a bit more. I'm going to have to learn a little bit more. I ended up just talking to you about it, and it was easier to get to kind of get a Cole's notes on it. But it was that quote unquote threatening until I went past the first page. And once you realize that it's not that big.
And it's kind of weird because if people get into these topics, I mean, of course, most of my stuff's derivative. I'm not going to say it's not. I think all arguments in some way are derivative based upon the shoulders of giants, right? Dr. Michael Martin, who is actually a well-cited, he's dead now, but he's a well-cited atheist philosopher that actually helped with books like Case Against God by Silverman. No, he was dead by then. It was George Smith's 1974's against a case against God. That's what he had reviewed, and he had some writing about negative atheism, which is lack theism basically. And he had actually written that he didn't word it this way, but he had written that they need to at least justify why they don't accept the proposition in some ways. So this was way back when, and of course Richard Carrier also read my blogs, and he agreed. Atheists have a burden of proof. Even the negative atheists have a burden of proof. Where we diverge is that he thinks that burden of proof has already been met. And I know Ozzy and Malpass have read his blog and said, wait a minute here, we think there's a problem here, as do I. I think that Carey has taken it too far, right? To say that atheists have a burden of proof, but that's already been met by Fiat, what he's attempting to do is move it in the realm of science kind of justification. Like science has said, evolution exists. The Earth is billions of years old by geology. So these things are established, right? So if we say I have a theory of gravity, like general relativity, that has met its burden of proof, right? So if I say, there's gravity is a theory, the theory that is substantiated and well cited and blah, 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 blah. I don't really have to prove anything or demonstrate, I should say, to anybody, right? I can just say it has already met its burden of proof in science. I'm okay with that. I think that is true. I think that science falls upon the person who says the theory is wrong. If I say, look, evolution's wrong, I have the burden to demonstrate that, to falsify it, not the scientist to show that the theory is well substantiated and the working model. That's not their job anymore. That's already been established by consensus. But Carrier's trying to use the same tactic to say it's already established by common consensus that atheism has met its burden of proof. Of course, that's something we can argue, but at least he recognizes by reading my blog, because he did a blog on my blog, that I'm right to have a rational position, whether you believe or don't believe, whether you side that it is the case or it is not the case, because that's a dichotomy. Both positions do require some kind of justificatory conditions of why you settled one way or the other. And I don't think that really should have any pushback on that. That should.
I don't think it's controversial in any way.
It really isn't. Like I said, Michael Martin said the same thing. I think Dr. Malik has something very similar in his writings. He even
what I think. It comes from. I think it comes from the fact that they're still internally integrating these sentences using the meaning of atheism that they're using publicly.
It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. Even if you don't believe, that still has a burden. Like Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty on the Atheist Edge looked right at the camera and said, because he said, Steve thinks that if you don't accept the theist proposition or something, you have a burden of proof. And he's looked at the camera and said, he's wrong. Has anybody ever heard Matt Dillahunty explain why I'm wrong? Has anybody ever heard him cite a source why I'm wrong? I have cited Martin. I've cited Carrier. Well, he didn't write he wrote a blog on it, not a paper. Mark wrote a book on it, and he has written some papers on these things. Malik wrote a paper.
I think they might be expecting that the form of justification you're asking for is kind of similar in terms of how strong it has to be, for what they would have accepted as a defense of, like, God definitely doesn't exist or God definitely does exist, where that isn't necessarily the case. And I think that's where the disconnect is.
Why don't they cite? Look, I mean, you ever notice when they cite the Four Horsemen? Like, and I will go over the New Atheist 10 things I wrote for the New Atheist here soon. It's in the video description. But do you ever notice they cite the Four Horsemen, like their general public work? They don't cite any of their papers. Why is that? I've never seen anybody cite their papers.
Of the four, I think only two of them actually have philosophy papers.
Dennett and Harris. But they do have bio. I mean, Dawkins has papers on biology.
Yeah, I don't know how many though. I think
now Dennett's not an easy read. I haven't read his. I've tried reading some of his work. He is extremely intelligent. There's no question about that, and way out of my depths.
The only thing I read of his was Breaking the Spell.
I'd have to go back and look at Dawkins' work, but I do know that he made a switch later on in his career to doing a lot more book writing than publication.
Yeah, and I have no problem with that, right? I mean, again, I think I've seen him do like a Bertrand Russell, kind of change his paradigm a little bit, and I noticed like Flew did the same thing, and a few other philosophers have changed, like just recently when I watched Dawkins and Alex O'Connor, Cosmic Skeptic, have a discussion. And by the way, I'm going to reach out to Alex on this. Maybe he'll talk to me about it. But Dawkins had been trying to explain to him, look, when you call a child an atheist, it is a form of indoctrination, no different than calling your child a Catholic. And I think
I don't disagree with him there.
I don't think Dawkins is that far off from that. I think that he makes a good argument. And again, I'm one of those people that don't want to have to agree with Dawkins on some things, right? But he was right, and I had to think about that too. I hadn't thought about that particular argument before, and O'Connor was just trying to go, well, by definition, they're atheist, and what she's wrong on, by the way. But it's like he didn't grasp what Dawkins was trying to tell him. It's like he's like, we need to be better. If we're going to put ourselves on the higher moral platform than theist, we need to do better. And by saying, that we're signing a label to a child, that is, in his opinion, a mild form of indoctrination. And I happen to have, I think I agree with them. Matter of fact, what? I do agree with them.
No, you have to have at least some idea of what the people are trying to advance and have considered it and rejected it for some reason. Otherwise, the label makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, even if you were a lacktheist, and even if you were just somebody who accepts atheism as merely not believing, does it make sense to attribute a specific label to a child because of your usages? Right? And now Connor, I think he is fundamentally wrong because he doesn't accept it as just usage. He thinks it's the R and Raw approach. This is the only acceptable, correct usage, right? Which, by the way, ironically, not the right use of word, but whatever. They think that I'm the one who says there's only one correct usage. And I like Autumn did that the other day, I think it was, or somebody. I was like, look, I have 7 usages for atheism that I've come up with easily that I've done in a presentation. I don't care which one you use. Let's talk about whichever one you want. But when they say, oh, there's only, like Alan has actually said, this is what it means, this is what it is. Anything else has been theist infiltration in the philosophical system, and they've changing the meaning. That's his argument.
Even if he's not wrong, it's still the normative use. So until that changes, he doesn't accept that. True.
He doesn't accept, and that's my argument. This has been one of my arguments. What is the normative use in philosophy? If I can't get someone to even accept that, we're not going to have a very intelligent conversation.
Yeah, but hang on, Steve. To be fair, you just said it's the normative use in philosophy.
Yes.
Okay. Before you introduced that to me, I didn't know that either.
Most of them don't, right? Because guess what?
Yeah.
ACA, AR, and A don't tell people that.
Now, not everybody lives and breathes, walks around talking in a philosophical manner. So, is it fair that to say this is how it's used in common common discourse?
I would say
when it's not necessarily used in common discourse, when you're just walking on the street talking to a friend.
I think it is.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, one sec. Yeah, just one sec though. I actually my experience is, again, this is experiential only, and this is completely my subjective opinion. But I think worldwide more people use the terms philosophically than what the ACA uses. I think the ACA is in the minority worldwide with atheists, because I talk to a lot of atheists around the world, and most of them go, yeah, atheism is the belief that God does not exist. And when I talk to people when I go out, that's their position as well. Now, again, that's completely subjective, but not a hill. I keep on saying I don't want to die on the hill of colloquial versus philosophical, but I think they're one and the same. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. I know other people that are much more well-versed in these topics than I am. They seem to agree. But, of course, that is something that is subjective. I cannot objectively demonstrate that. But anyways, go ahead. Was that Chesh? What up, girl? Hi.
Hello.
Do Discord. Who dis?
Hello, Canuck. How are you?
Oh yeah, they're fucking multiplying. Shit.
I kind of want to.
Wait, Chess, real quick. So I think it was Mr. Serious. I said I'm gonna go live with the Canadian Atheist, and he goes, "Oh, Cheshire." And I'm like, no. I was like, no. Go ahead.
Not me. I just want to jump in on that, and yeah, absolutely, it is fair. It would be unfair to necessarily expect everyone to know out the gate. That would be unfair.
Sure.
But if they're going to discuss a topic and learn about a topic, then it's more than reasonable to accept and discuss what is going to be common usages in the field you're talking about, which is philosophy. Because, like it or not, atheism is philosophy. So it's not, there's no issue with, oh, somebody doesn't know. It's an issue of they don't know and they don't care. They don't know and they don't care, but they want to have the discussion. Or they don't know and they don't care, and they're belligerent toward you about this thing that they don't know. That's where you start running into problems.
And what about when they say they actually do know about the topic, and they say, "Well, I'm worse in this topic," and I'm like, "Okay, what have you read on?" And maybe at most
they get mad at you.
Yeah, and most they've read like Selfish Gene or something. But it's like, well, I mean, that doesn't really tell me you understand.
Didn't you know that Jared Kushner, who was put in charge of peace between Palestine Palestine and the Israeli government, read a whole 25 books on the topic. Well, dang.
Is
Well,
that
no,
like, is that like
and I think in that case-
Ivanka Trump?
Yeah.
You can actually
Yeah.
read? That's news to me.
Right?
Yeah. Steve, when
Nepotism's real.
with what Chess just said, someone who who does know but won't know or wants to play ignorant or something like that, then
Oh, that's a different
then
issue.
then you might have the grounding to use the word used earlier, which is dogmatic.
Okay. Yeah. So what do
No,
I?
That's when I think
I would
you have
also-
grounds to use that word.
I think you might be able to extend that usage. I would say you're able to extend the usage by saying that, oh well, we're going to say that Steve is wrong because somebody who is prominent in the group says Steve is wrong. That's dogmatic also. They're
Oh, yeah, I agree with
believing
that.
or
Yeah.
they're claiming or they're pushing this idea and they haven't verified it for themselves, particularly when it's something that's not true.
Yeah.
Sure, but saying someone's righteous because they're in the group or higher up in the group or an admin, that's just bootlicking.
Well,
Oh,
yeah. But it's not.
Mm.
It's like these are not experts they're citing. I'm sorry, but Matt Dillahunty is not an expert in epistemology. I'm not an expert in epistemology. People should not cite us as experts in any way, shape, or form. But if they say, "Look, Matt Dillahunty says this, and it's a good argument," great. If not, that's fine. I don't mind them saying,
Well,
"Hey,
yeah, the
Steve's-"
argument should stand on its own.
Absolutely.
The argument stands on
But
its
here's
own.
the problem. I have yet for somebody to say Matt Dillahunty says Steve is wrong, and here's the reasoning, and here's a an actual well formulated argument. He doesn't have that. He just says I'm wrong by Fiat, and he runs some stupid thing like you believe, you don't believe. That's what he did to me on Facebook. And I'm like, well, nobody's arguing against that.
Can I
yeah.
interject?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is something that I find very infuriating because I believe that the stupidest person in the world can say something profound every once in a while. It's possible. I'm not saying that you're the stupidest person in the world, Steve.
Broken clock is right twice a day.
I get lucky.
Right.
It depends how much coffee I have.
But these people, and I do think it's all dogmatic. I don't care if it's even bootlicking. I've seen like the evidence that they just literally take by fiat everything that's said by people who they believe that are smarter than them. The Four Horsemen are like infallible. It is so gross. And they take Matt Dillahunty's words, just they don't even think about it. They don't even try to look up anything about it. And then Steve comes along, and then there's something like, no new information allowed. We have all the information. We're done. That is a religion.
Yeah.
They haven't even tried to debunk Steve's argument. And I would love to see them try. I am waiting for somebody to debunk
I've
it.
asked.
Because as far as I'm concerned, since I believe Steve's argument, my knowledge on that is done until somebody debunks it. And I don't want my knowledge on that to be done. I love learning new stuff. So somebody please come and debunk that thing.
And on top of that too, right, is that there's a dogmatic way of thinking when you're trying to push an agenda. And the ACA is known, it's in their thing that they are trying to push a political agenda.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the way they're going about it could be argued to be good in some ways and bad in others. By taking people, it's almost predatory in some ways, by taking people who are already used to dogmatic thinking and then imposing just substituting the dogma instead of actually helping these people out of that poor mindset or poor way of looking at things or lacking understanding, then that's a big problem, and that's not a good way to get people to be educated or get people to be good critical thinkers or good skeptics, which is something that the ACA totes that they do.
That's the point.
If they didn't do that, if they didn't say that, oh, we're about skepticism and oh, we're about this and this, if they didn't do those things, there would be no problem.
Well, I think there'd be a problem. Would it be as hypocritical?
Well, it'd be a different. Sorry, yeah, it'd be a different issue.
Michael.
But what it does do, and this is something that Mr. Sirius, you hit the nail right on the head there, is that it appears, and Steve, you said the word before, dogmatic. Mr. Sirius, you said religion, and that's why someone like Kent Hovind, who knows he's lying every time he opens his mouth.
Yes, I agree with you.
Will stay there and say atheism is a religion.
Yeah.
Because of those very specific things. Chesh, you said it. Mr. Sears, you said it. And that's why I say what I say and say, like, this is not a sort of prepared to throw myself on. We need to rally behind the things that we do have in common so we can stand up to the person who gets on his YouTube every day with a bunch of his sycophants sitting in front of him and lies to everybody.
Yeah,
Except that he's right.
Well, he's
Except
right in that
that he's
regard.
right.
Yeah, he is right in that regard. But
So-
He's right now,
hang
but
on.
he's not right about the other things.
He does a hasty generalization, right? We're talking about a very specific group that we could probably justify very well and demonstrate that I think has religiosity to it. And he's extrapolating it to atheism in general. And I have videos out there
Right.
explaining atheism is not a fucking religion, right? I mean, I do not hold the position that atheism is a religion.
The way you do that, right? Because what Kent is doing is, you're right. He's mass generalizing using a small few. But the way you fix that is by calling out the small few as
Exactly.
Isn't necessary, and fixing the issue and addressing the issue, not just bringing everybody into the fold. Because if you bring everybody in and you allow that behavior to exist, you're condoning it. You're allowing it to continue going, which then justifies Kent's argument.
Yeah, you're complacent.
Which means
Point.
that
That's a super fair point.
By that way, then Kent is correct.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so
Here's
here's
a question.
Okay, go
Although
ahead.
he's still not correct in the sense that atheism ends up being a religion.
Well, we know
It's
that. Yeah.
specific
We-
groups
Well, from a
of
philosophical,
atheists have
yeah.
like specific groups
I-
within the atheist population end up having a degree of religiosity over certain topics, but the way he describes it's still technically not correct.
Well, in two ways. He's still technically correct in the sense that if the other atheist groups or atheists are accepting this behavior and thereby saying that, no, this is okay, then he can make that statement in a social aspect. But in the aspect of technically by the philosophy of what atheism actually is, then no, he would. A better argument for Kent would be that people are religious. People in groups tend to lean towards this kind of thinking, this kind of dogmatic thinking, et cetera, and atheism is no different. That would be a more accurate argument on Kent's.
Yes.
That's fair. I would, one of the things that I would like to know, and somebody should do a poll on this. I won't because I'm too lazy. But like in these groups, if you had to take, these this group of people, atheists, regardless of your flavor, how many subscribe to the dictionary definition versus the philosophical definition?
I think
I'd be
worldwide,
fascinated to hear what those numbers are.
Okay, well, I did it in the Great Debate Community group when we had it on G+, and if I remember, it was somewhere between like 72-75% adopted the philosophical. Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's pretty high.
I think depending on where you go in the world, you would end up with a couple of different problems to that. Not because I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a great idea. You get some really interesting information from that. But I think you would notice a couple of issues. One of them would be depending on where in the world you're asking and the education level of that area, and two, people not understanding the question. So
That's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Right. So you'd have to define each one, but you'd have to define each one without them knowing which one their group is using, because I don't think it's a lot of people are assholes. I think it's a lot of people are ignorant. And I don't mean ignorant in a bad way. I mean ignorant as in they don't know.
Well, after the social
Ignorance
distance,
not a bad word.
Yeah, no, it's not all. I'm ignorant in a lot of things. I'm inept on a lot of things.
I don't think it is. I just like to clarify because a lot of people take it as an insult.
Yeah, and I don't
clarify because we're Canadian.
I am very happy to acknowledge. Hey, look, I'm the first person to go tell you, like, when it comes to like anime, I'm inept, right? I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of subjects. I'm cool with that. I don't take it as an insult in any way.
Yada yada desure.
Yeah, Inuyasha, Kagome, shards. There you go. That's my extent. But. When the social distancing gets over with, I like to do some man on the street kind of stuff and actually talk to people. I discussed that with Brittany Simon when she was living up here, and maybe even when I go to Boston, I'd love to maybe do it with Nick or Sweet. Both of them would even be better. To just.
I live in Newton Upper Falls, so I'd be around.
I think it'd be great if we got like a non sequitur hub spot, and if we got a non sequitur hub spot, we could like host barbecues.
Oh, that'd be awesome. So you mentioned Hovind and stuff. So I think this is a good time maybe to actually go over the 10 things that I came up with. What I see that is consistent with New Atheists, and see what you guys think of it. And again, you can apply this to any group.
I'm gonna run then for a little bit. I may or may not be back.
Okay, we'll be here. Rum and Coke night tonight. It's going to be about 5 or 6 o'clock Pacific time, and then that's going to be probably titled something along the lines of YouTube tells victim to contact victimizer or something.
Oh God,
Yeah.
Great.
Can I make
clicky,
one
but
point
true.
before you to your 10?
Okay, later.
Yep.
Okay. I think that the biggest divide that we have when it comes to like the ACA and our community, we call ourselves like the Great Debate Community because we like we hold skepticism to be very important. I don't think that they know what skepticism is, and I think that they think they do.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that a lot of people do either, but I'm not a skeptic, and let me tell you what I mean by that. In the philosophical sense of the term, and now the way you probably mean it and other people mean it, and I think you do understand the difference, but they don't understand the difference, right? So I'd like to be a little more specific. Now, if somebody says, well, are you a skeptic as like in terms of like Skeptic magazine, and do you withhold judgment? Do you have sufficient reason, that kind of stuff? Sure. But I think a lot of people are generally that. The ones that aren't that way are the ones that see a piece of dust on a camera, go, look, it's an orb, it's a ghost, it's this. That's not somebody who I was going to be of skeptical mindset, right? So in that regard, sure, I'm a skeptic. But a skeptic is somebody who thinks that knowledge is impossible, right? That's what a true skepticism is. I don't
know about that.
Is that Pyrrhonism?
Well, yeah, there's two real schools of skepticism. There's academic skepticism, and it's Pyrrhonian skepticism. The academic skeptic says knowledge is not possible, and the Pyrrhonian skeptic says, well, we don't even know if knowledge is possible. They're so much of a skeptic that they can't even make the assertion that knowledge is not possible, right? But both of them don't believe that knowledge is possible. They just can't. Like I said, there's a difference. The Pyrrhonian skeptic said, we don't know if knowledge is possible. So skepticism is about the knowability of things. Can we have actual knowledge? And there are arguments for skepticism, right? There's a lot of them out there. Mackey has them. Moore has them. A whole bunch of people have arguments for and against skepticism.
Should I have used that term instead? Should I have said skepticism instead of skeptic?
Well, let me tell you, skeptic is somebody who follows skepticism, generally speaking, right? But again, I understand what they mean by skeptic, because somebody who has a critical mindset and it's more scientific, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that terminology. Don't get me wrong.
This is one of those cases where the traditional usage has fallen away from the colloquial usage so far that it no longer means the same thing.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Words are fine. I mean, people think that I'm a prescriptivist. I'm not. I'm a descriptivist. I don't have a problem with people using skeptic in that term, because I know what they mean by it, right? There's no logical inconsistencies. There's no category error that it produces, unlike the lack of belief definition, which does produce logical errors, right? There's a huge difference to be had there, right? But yeah, so I think knowledge is possible because I adhere to justified true belief and justified true belief plus, and those kinds of theories of knowledge. A skeptic would say, well, we don't even need those theories of knowledge because you can't have knowledge. And they, like I said, that is a legitimate school of philosophy that some people hold. And there's reasons why there are good arguments to say we cannot have knowledge. Very good arguments, in fact. And it's just one of those things. Do you want to fall on one side of the fence or the other? I think both of the both sides of the fence, there's no one specific way you can say this is objective of the case. I fall on the fence that we have knowledge because that's what my writing's about, right? When I write about epistemology. But if somebody says, hey, Steve, I am I'm an academic or Pyrrhonian skeptic, and these are the arguments for skepticism, I'm not going to say they're wrong on it, right? There's a difference. I'd be like, okay, that's in your schema. You're perfectly fine to accept those things, and you're not wrong,
Yeah.
So
I think it really comes down to what you how you end up thinking of knowledge in that respect, and
yeah, the condition, like for the conditions of knowledge, right? I mean, JTB gives you conditions, right?
The way I could see it is like you could end up falling on the other side of the fence and refuse knowledge as possible if you're requiring a lot more proof level type rather than a Bayesian, with the probability below some arbitrary limit.
I don't think it's proof. I think it's conditions. When we have knowledge, we have determined there are certain conditions that need to be met to say we have knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in JTB, there's three conditions. The proposition has to be true. You have to believe the proposition and to be justified to believe the proposition. But of course, Gettier cases and Linda Zabesky has came along and said, all these theories have issues with it. You could never really have actual knowledge with any kind of belief.
Right.
In this case.
What I'm getting at is if someone doesn't go with the JTB with some other model, they could still end up using something like Bayesian logic and probability theory to approach this is good enough for now without it being considered knowledge.
Yeah, that's actually called the swamping problem. What's the difference between justified true belief and knowledge? Is there anything of value the difference? So if you're arguing Bayesian, you'd say, look, this is good enough. Is there any other value by saying I know versus something that is actually true that I believe? Well, if you think about it, what is the value difference? I mean, if I say I believe P is true and P happens to be true, I believe snow is white, and it is the case that snow is white because that is a fact. Either in one theory, like correspondence, you got some truth maker that exists, right? Or that an instantiation of something that is true. So if I say snow is white, It is saying it is the case that snow is white because there's some fact in the matter in the world that corresponds to it that makes it so, it instantiates it. That would be the correspondence theory. Deflationary theory doesn't give a shit. Deflationary theory says that snow is white is the same as saying it is true as white, and the only reason that's the case is because there's no truth maker to be had. It is just P is true if and only if P is true. Okay, so the statement is only true if it is true. So that's a different way of looking at these theories. And so the skeptic comes along and says, look, there's issues with all these different theories. We can never have any kind of epistemic certainty. So we can never give enough conditions to make it something where we add value to knowledge to make it any different than just saying, I believe P is true, as opposed to I know P is true. If you think about it, now we look at it like with words, right? If somebody says, I believe it's 8 o'clock and I know it's 8 o'clock, people are going to say, well, that person has a greater degree of certainty, right? Because that's how we read into it, I think. But is there
regardless of their meaning, right?
Regardless of the meaning.
Yeah.
But both statements are, but both statements are
morning.
true. Knowledge requires belief, right? So if I know it's 3 o'clock and I just tell you, Al, hey, I believe it's 3 o'clock, even though I know it, but that's a true statement. But am I lessening my confidence level by telling you that? I don't think so.
I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to what I was saying earlier. I wanted to.
Who are you again? I'm sorry. No,
I have this my fourth thought.
Yeah, we got to get to these 10 things, so go ahead.
I have a feeling, I have no basis or backing up this, but I just have a feeling that the people in the ACA think that skepticism is equal to just simply not believing anything that Steve says and probably a whole lot of other people.
Yeah, they call it, well, it's ordinary doubt. What they do, they try to treat skepticism as ordinary doubt. And again, this is something that's been written upon. It's even written in the Stanford Encyclopedia. And I understand when they mean skepticism, they are referring to the usage of ordinary doubt. This is why I don't have an issue with it. It doesn't present any logical problems, right? So when somebody says, are you a skeptic? I'm going to assume that they probably mean ordinary doubt in these conversations. But if I'm having a discussion with Grandma Oppie or something, right? And he says, do you fall into the school of skepticism? I'm going to tell him no, obviously, right? But then somebody who doesn't understand the topic goes, oh, look, Steve's not skeptical. He doesn't have a critical mind. He'll believe anything. That's not what it means, in the context of the discourse. So you got to be real careful on these conversations. And this is why I don't care how somebody uses the term, if they want to use it as ordinary doubt. I just want people to understand the difference. Like, Mr. Sears, you didn't know the difference before. Now you do, right?
I do.
Awesome. See, that's how it works. That's why people stick around. All right, so let's go over these 10 things that we got again now. Can we? Because it's already been an hour. All right, so these are the 10 things. Let's see what you guys think on these things. Okay, ready? And we'll ask you guys in the live chat here if this is something you've seen. And again, I think I can apply this to younger creationism. I can apply this to flat earthers. I can apply it to regressives, progressives. It's not ubiquitous just to New Atheist TM, but this is what I find too. The only one of them you have to change, like number 7, and we'll get to that. All right, so number 1. And basically, like I said, when you're having a conversation on Facebook or Twitter or something like that, especially Facebook, remember 1, argument by meme. And what I mean by that is that a lot of these people don't actually have dialogues. What they have is a response by a GIF or a meme or some image that they think is a refutation, which most of the time, in my experience, doesn't even address the issue or is actually fundamentally wrong. And then they'll spam these things usually. They're just like, okay, and that's how they consider an argument should go. Do you guys see that a lot?
Oh, yeah, especially with quotes like, Hitchens Razor. They'll always it mostly takes the form of a quote or some type of
or
thing
a meme containing a quote.
Oh, and you know what? I should have make that number. I want to keep this down to 10, but that's actually almost like 11. Hitchens Razor. They hate Hitchens Razor applied to them.
Yeah.
I might add that. We'll see here.
They hate memes applied to them.
Well, who doesn't? That's fair.
Yeah.
But Hitchens Razor, when you say, wait a minute, you made a claim here, you have no evidence for it, I'm dismissing your claim by Hitchens Razor. Man, did New Atheist TM get upset.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with that. I have Hitchens Razor tattooed on my arm, and I don't have a problem with it. And like I said, if before I had formulated some arguments to back my shit up, I probably would have had. If somebody would have said that to me, I don't even know how I would have responded to them. I probably would have just sat there fucking slack-jawed and be like, I don't know what to say, because I would have been caught in the same thing that I was trying to gotcha moment with them. Now that I've formulated some arguments, say, well, this is why. You hear my arguments for it. I have no problem with it whatsoever, because it's someone like and this is where I get where Steve was saying before, someone like, Darth Dawkins or something like that says, when I talk to him on modern day debate, and and he said to me, he's like, everything is evidence of God. And he just fucking stops at that, just fucking stops. And it's just like, no. And that's where I'll apply Hitchens Razor. And
I got no problem with that.
He never, ever got, he never went beyond that because he doesn't have anything.
I think it's a good tool. Do I think it's a catch-all? No, but I think like most tools, given the right application of it, sure. And in that application, I'm fine with it, right?
It's really useful for arguments from absurdity, in demonstrating them because, some will either say it's not absurd or they'll say that's a straw man of, a real argument. And it's like, where's the real argument then?
Oh, yeah. Well, I get that too. And that's when I use it. Like somebody says, well, you're straw manning. And it's like, you haven't even addressed my argument. You just say I'm straw manning. What am I straw manning here? I get that a lot of people as a rejoinder to some of my arguments or actually not even that, more like just an outright first response. Well, I'm not going to address your argument, Steve, because you're straw manning atheism. What the hell does that even mean? Atheism is not an argument. You cannot straw man atheism. Atheism is not an argument. You can argue it's a proposition, and I do. Atheism is a proposition, or it has a propositional component to it. And I just read a paper not long ago talking about atheism as a non-cognitivist position, possibly having a non-cognitive component to it. It's pretty well articulated, and I haven't evaluated their argument fully yet, but I do agree. Like theism, there's a cognitive and a non-cognitive component to theism. And I think that they're right on that, and I'll address that another time. But excuse me, when they just say, "Well, you're straw manning atheism," what the hell does that even mean? That's if I said,
if someone
you're straw manning theism, what would that mean to somebody? I have no idea.
Maybe that they're taking it as a body of claims that a certain group is making, and that because you're attacking a fringe, that means you're, trying to use the fringe as a category of.
I mean, look,
if they're real, it defeats that it's a straw man. It's a real person.
I'm willing to give a little principle of charity. I don't think Christianity is an argument either. But if somebody says, "Hey," if I said, "Hey, look, Christians believe that Christ rose from the dead 8 days later," somebody says, "No, Steve, that's not the case. You're that's that wouldn't be a straw man. It's like misinformation. It would be a good straw man." Christians.
Jesus was a zombie.
Yes. Okay. There you go. Okay, that's fine. Yes, Christian. That to me is a straw man type argument because that's not what they're arguing. Sure, but that to me is if you allow to say Christianity is some kind of argument, which again, principle of charity. But atheism or theism are not arguments; they're categories, and so I think that they're fundamentally wrong on that right out of the gate. All right. So number 2. So you guys, like I said, you guys seen this quite often. Okay. So check on this one.
Yes.
Awesome.
And I think it's a lot just from people parroting what they heard. They don't know what they're talking about. They like to play skeptic. I'm sorry, I don't want to use that word anymore.
That's another type of thing for new atheists. They parrot a lot.
Yes.
All right. So I might add these things in somehow. So this is like preliminary. Number 2, they fail to understand simple arguments. I legit, especially this more on Twitter, but you give them a very simple syllogism. They don't understand it. They don't understand the arguments that are being presented, and when they don't, they basically say you're wrong by fiat.
Right, because they don't know the topic at all. They're just arguing from the things that they've heard. I mean, it's obvious because they can't even address the argument in front of them. They never put any real thought and effort into, like, what do you call it? Actually learning anything. It's just, I heard this from so-and-so, I'm going to repeat what they say.
I don't believe you, right? That's their retort, right? You haven't convinced me. That's the Dillahunty type argumentation. Well, you haven't convinced me. So what?
Yeah, what does that say about my argument?
Does that mean I'm wrong? And I've explained that. That's what I mean by they fail to understand simple arguments. I'm like, here's my argument. I have failed to convince you, you claim, ergo you say that I'm wrong. You fail to understand the argument, yet you say I'm wrong. Does that make any sense to you? That is not an appropriate response. You can say you have failed to convince me because I don't understand your argument, so I can't evaluate your argument. But if you say that I'm merely wrong because I haven't convinced you, that doesn't explain why my argument is wrong.
I think that's the only good thing I've ever heard Matt Slick say, is that people who are hardline atheists should not take refuge in subjectivity to defend their positions.
I think there's something to be said for that. Now, again, I think that there's always a subjective component on a lot of these things. But when I'm being subjective, I do try to.
But to use it as a shield, like this is what I believe. That literally sounds religious.
Yeah, I believe you're wrong, ergo you're wrong.
If you can't understand why they think your argument's wrong, does that flip it over and make it right again?
I don't know. Maybe. Could be. Double negative. He believes.
Yeah.
I believe. I don't know. Okay, number 3. They do not understand very simple logic. This is, again, something I see very ubiquitous through New Atheist. Again, they'll say, well, yeah, I promote logic and reason, but they don't know what logic means in this regard. I mean, they think like Spock is like logic. How often do you see Spock actually do real logic? Like, not very often. But if you say that, you're logical and you study logic and blah, blah, and you don't know what modus ponens is or a rule of inference, or you say that my argument's invalid, and I say, well, why is this an invalid argument? Like, I had this happen on the ACA not too long ago, and me and Ocean Keltoy and a few other people, JJ were just like trying to explain to this guy, look, Steve's right. I'm right on this. This is where you just go, shh, listen, kind of thing, right? But they were insisting that this was not a valid argument, but they couldn't explain why. Here's my argument. This is what Noam Chomsky had a tagline that he always used: colorless green ideas sleep furiously, or something like that, right? So mine is this: if the moon is made of green cheese, then I am a moose. The moon is made of green cheese. Therefore, I am a moose. Don't ask me why I came up with that long story. I don't even know what the hell it is anymore. But is that a valid syllogism? Right?
Yes.
Clearly, yes. Right? I mean, it is a valid syllogism because it's based upon modus ponens. It's P implies Q, P therefore Q. Absolutely valid. Right? Because the conclusion follows from the premises. And I had this person argue repeatedly, well, those are not related things. So how can the conclusion follow? Because it's not
irrational.
Sound. It's not sound.
Yeah. And like I said in my reply to the very same thing in the thread, no, it's valid. It's just not sound.
Right. But when you have somebody says they know logic and they're telling me that that's not valid, and then when you say, well, how is it not? Here's the structure, modus ponens, and they're like, oh, those are just symbols. Oh, okay.
Well, Steve, you got to understand, he's parroting somebody who says that they know logic. So therefore he, by osmosis, also knows logic.
No, nobody in logic would say that was invalid, right? Now, yes, it's not sound, right? And soundness requires both validity and the premises to be true, right? So if it was an invalid rule of inference, like if you're doing for me the consequent or something, and I said P implies Q, Q therefore P, that would be obviously invalid, and that makes it unsound because soundness requires both validity and for the premises to be true. Gerhard for £10 he says, Steve, this is a part in the ACA. There's a part in the ACA descriptions, quote, we define atheism as a lack of belief in gods. This definition also encompasses what most people call agnosticism. Is this all good now? They've had that for a while, and you know what? It is not it's necessary but not sufficient in a way that they at least acknowledge that they define atheism as a lack of gods, but they have not justified why it encompasses what calls agnosticism. And let me explain to you why. Even though agnosticism logically would follow in this case, right? Right? If you just do not believe in God, and agnostics do lack of belief in God, they would follow. They have not epistemically justified the reasoning to do so, right? Because now you've invalidated the agnostic position, right? Because the agnostic position is, they don't accept atheism or theism, but you're just refining a term, so now you can shoehorn it, right? And now you've incorporated them for political reasons. So yes, it's not that statement they have is a true statement, right? I'm not going to tell you that it's not a true statement, but there are some epistemic issues with it because logically it incorporates agnosticism. Epistemically, it doesn't. Agnosticism means you've suspended judgment on it, right? That's what is implied by agnosticism. Atheism does not explicitly say that they suspend judgment on it. Now, granted, effectively, ostensibly, that probably is the case. But there are epistemic differences between these terminologies, even though they are logically the same. And the way I would describe that is, would you agree that would you agree that Christianity and Judaism are both theism? But there are clearly epistemic differences with them, right? They believe in claim knowledge and beliefs to very different things. So even though theism would include Judaism, theism would include Christianity, you cannot say that they are somehow the same thing, right? You can't say that they're epistemically related, right? So agnosticism here shouldn't fall under atheism. It should fall under non-theism, right? Because non-theism is nondescript. It is just a necessary category formulated by the fact that you have theism. There has to be a complementary set for the universal set. So universal set is a complementary set plus the set. So if you have theism, you have not theism, put them together, you have all things. Right? So I don't think it's sufficient in my opinion. But the only reason they only put that in there is because guess who's been talking about this stuff for the last couple of years? I'm sure I had some influence in that in some ways, or at least I'm confident that myself, or at least if not me, other people that have been talking about this for sure. You know, when you read the super chat, we elaborate a bit on this. Go ahead, yeah. So I think I've kind of elaborated on that. It's just that, like I said, I think that they try to shoehorn agnosticism and atheism. I had this discussion on my page the other day. Trying to explain to them why theological and cognitivists can't be atheists, right? That's a huge category error. And by shoehorning them into atheism, you've nullified their position. Because to them, atheism is not a category. But you're saying, oh, well, you're in theological cognitivists, I'm going to put you into atheism because you lack a belief in gods. What you've done there is you've nullified their position. And by the way, Dillahunty doesn't even like that definition of lack of belief in gods. He thinks that it implies that you're actually lacking something that you need. There's a connotation aspect to be had, and I'm not sure I disagree with him on that, but whatever. It's irrelevant. All right, so number 4. Oh wait, do you guys 3? Do you guys see that often as well? Let's get a vote on that.
I don't, but
okay. Anybody else do though? No.
I'm sorry. Repeat the question. I was
do not understand.
3.
Do not understand very simple logic. All right, so let me. Who said?
Oh yeah, there's mistakes in it all the time.
Michael, you said that. So can you give me somebody in the atheist community? That would fall under probably new atheist TM that kind of knows logic. Do you know anybody off the top of your head?
In absolute fairness, the things that you said were super simple syllogisms, and
yes,
I think
I'm
if
not going
you,
for complexity.
Yeah. So I think that I'd have to think. I
don't know if T.J. Kirk falls under New Atheism or not, but generally, despite the fact that he goes off the wall and a bit crazy at times, he does appear to understand basic logic.
I don't think he would fall under New Atheism. And by the way, I've liked some of T.J.'s monologues. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of his other stuff, but some of his monologues I have to agree with. But again, I don't go by agree or disagree because if I like the person or not, right? I mean, TJ makes a good argument in his monologue. I'm like, yeah, he has
an interesting style as well sometimes when he gets more serious.
He's very
I enjoy him at his best when he's being serious and not doing a channel takedown or
I agree with you. I think he's better on the
drunk poets thing or whatever they're called, or peasants. Yeah,
drunken peasants.
I don't pay much attention to that stuff.
He hasn't been in part of that.
Yeah, I'm on the drunken peasants twice a month.
Yeah,
but
they're vastly different. The original co-host, Ben is hosting someone named Billy.
Yeah, Ben.
So I think to be fair, to answer your question, if we're talking about things that are very basic, and I don't pretend to be that well versed in these things either. I think you could probably put together something that was valid and sound, and I probably wouldn't know it. So I'm not going to disparage what anybody else may or may not know. But I think if you're talking about very simple ones, sure. I think if you're talking about, I would say 90+% of the ones that you go into online, no, I don't think they did.
Yeah, well, I mean, very simple, like a very simple thing I could probably tell you that it would make sense. If I said, like, for example, if it rains tonight, my car will be wet. My car is not wet, therefore I didn't rain tonight. That is modus tollens, right? That's that, and that. If you think about it, right, just think about it. Go, wait a minute. Okay, so if it rains tonight, my car will be wet. Doesn't my car isn't wet now? Okay, well, actually, that may not necessarily be sound. Because you could have
because there could be dew droplets as well.
Your car could be in a garage, right? So it's not wet and it still rained, but it is logically valid, right? So it is logically valid, but it's not sound. So I'm trying to think of a logically valid and sound argument.
The first one you gave was the green cheese thing.
No, that's not sound. It doesn't. The premise isn't true, right? I mean, if obviously the mood is not made of green cheese, how can it be sound?
Oh, sorry, the one you said about the moose or something.
Yeah, that's not a sound argument. It's valid, but it's not sound.
Well, I've just demonstrated that I'm not sure either.
Yeah, sound means the premises are true and it's valid.
Yeah.
Here we go. Like this would be all humans are men. I am a human. Therefore, all human. let's see, if you're a man, you are a human. I am a man, therefore I'm human. That's valid and sound because the premises are true. Modus ponens. Right?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Number 4. Do not understand very simple epistemology. I don't think a lot of them even know what the word means. I do not find a single solitary new atheist TM. Okay, let me rephrase it. I don't see any of the new atheist TM that are not in the higher echelons that know about epistemology.
They get angry at things like foundationalism.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you mentioned properly basic beliefs and they lose your shit, or you mentioned faith-based commitments and they lose their shit. So,
I don't have any beliefs.
Yeah.
Yes, it's funny, and here's another one where I am a novice. I'll admit it, and I have no problem with it. My understanding that epistemology is how we come to knowledge, how we come to know things.
Yeah, well, the study of knowledge, sure. But again, these new atheist TM, I'm not talking about like Matt Dillahunty. I don't think he would even follow new atheist TM because these are people that are in the lower echelons, right? I mean, I probably should have differentiated between them and the higher people because even though there's some similarities, right? These new atheist TMs are the people that follow the Four Horsemen, and people follow
The
Matt
problem of
Dillahunty.
induction rhetoric goes around everywhere.
They still don't get that. Arn to this day doesn't understand the problem of induction, I don't think. He used to, and he probably still does. He thinks the problem of induction is not reliable, or you can't say that it's reliable.
And then he'll use it and say it worked today, it will work tomorrow. It's
Yeah,
oh
his
my God, no.
argument. Well, it worked yesterday, therefore it worked tomorrow.
Jesus.
But we can't say for certainty that's not the problem of induction, and he's been explaining this a billion times. But I still don't think that he understands the problem of induction. It has nothing to do with that. In fact, that is absolutely circular, and you cannot argue induction by using induction. But that's Hume's problem with induction, is that you can't justify it, right? He thinks that the justification of induction is impossible because in order to any attempt to justify utilizes induction. Any attempt does, because you're basing it upon the fact that you've seen something about it working, right?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
No,
That you have to function in reality.
the idea is that the reason that there's a problem is that you literally you have to make the argument a priori, and without in that basis you can't.
Yeah,
because
yeah. Well, you can't even know a priori because you can't have knowledge of it because you cannot justify it, right? Because one of the conditions is justification. It's certainly not a posteriori because you can't observe tomorrow what is today. I had this same idiot the other day. He was like, I was like, well, how do you? He's like, his argument was this: I do not believe anything until it's been demonstrated, right? Which I think is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Because in my counter argument to him was, okay, how do you believe then? Because I said, do you believe that induction will work tomorrow? He's like, yes. Well, how do you believe that without demonstration? Well, I can demonstrate it tomorrow. Yeah, but you're believing it now. How could you demonstrate something that won't happen until tomorrow? He didn't seem to grasp that. It was very infuriating too.
Well, yeah, no, it's the inherent assumption of consistency within the universe over time of a basic belief, and that part just doesn't get through to some people. That you have to take certain minimal steps before you can even build your worldview
right.
out.
Uniform of nature is taken as a properly basic belief or a faith-based commitment. I have no problem with that. That's classical foundationism. All right, number 5. Insist dogmatically that they are correct, regardless of any and all evidence to the contrary. Do we even discuss this one?
Yeah, guilty.
Yeah, they all do this. Everyone that I talk to on Facebook and on Twitter do this. Just you're wrong. And I will put Matt Dillahunty into this too, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what you cite them, and they'll just like, well, you're just appealing to authority. Okay, how is that wrong? Do we not appeal to authorities? Do you not cite Dawkins? Do you not cite on biology, or do you not cite Daniel Dennett on philosophy? Which is fine, nothing wrong with that if they're an expert in the field. But
what's fallacious about appealing to authority is usually if they're an irrelevant authority, or if it's something that's like not very well demonstrated in the publications of a given authority.
There's a couple ways. There's a couple ways you can commit the fallacy. Either A, the person is not an expert in the relative field, or if the person has not evaluated the proposition or said anything about it, right? Because you can't cite somebody as an expert and say, well, Dawkins this or that, and Dawkins never weighed in on it, right? It
would be quote mining.
Yeah, well, you have to have something to quote. But if I said, "Hey, Al, my mechanic says I need new brakes, and I trust him because he's an expert, and my mechanic hasn't even looked at my brakes yet," that's a fallacy, right? That's appeal to authority. That's fallacious because I'm appealing to somebody who's not actually evaluated the subject matter yet. That's a rare
appeal
use.
to uncontacted. That's like an appeal to an uncontacted authority.
There you go. But there actually is what's called a legitimate appeal to authority, right? Which is called argumentative ad verbicundium. It's a legitimate argument to authority, which is perfectly fine. I call those citations, right? These are what's supporting evidence to your proposition. This is where people like Matt Dillahunty do outright, I think, I'm going to say he's deceptive on this because he has been corrected on it. I know by people that have talked to him. He knows he should know better. And he has said numerous times, I have used citations to show that to say that I am right, and it is true because of the citations and the experts. I've never done that. I would never do that. I don't know damn well that's a fallacy. You cannot say I am right because such and such says, I'm right. That is a fallacy. I would never say P is true because Graham Oppie says it's true. That is a fallacy.
Yeah, it's a parody cutting out the middle connecting premise.
Yeah, you would have to say
that they've talked about it.
I would have to say I am true because blah blah blah. Let's say like 0.99 repeat equals 1. Here's the calculus proof, and it's supported by these PhDs in math. Perfectly fine. But if I say 0.99 repeat equals 1 because Landon Kurt Knoll says so, that's a fallacy. Now, if I say it is more likely the case that 0.99 repeating equals 1 because Landon says so, that you can make an argument for that.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that. Yeah, that's a probabilistic argument.
The easiest way to go after it is to point out that 1 over 9 is all repeating ones, and multiplying that by 9 gets you repeating nines, which is essentially 9 over 9, which is fucking 1. It's pretty easy to demonstrate.
Yeah, and I actually have a person that for like 3 years has trolled my pages on that particular topic. Like literally a troll.
It doesn't surprise me. I've run across trolls like that.
Yeah, numerous cows because he's so beat on it. And even a friend of mine called Epic Math Time, who was working on a PhD in math, he did a video on this guy and just eviscerated him. And he still can't get over the fact he's just fundamentally wrong. This is what I'm saying. This is going to be applied to a lot of different things.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was gone for a bit. Were you saying like you're trying to say like about like parroting somebody else's argument, but like I'm not sure what you were saying. I'm sorry. I got nothing to say about it.
I'm just saying that they as somebody pointed out, like Maki points out, it's called ipse dixit, that somebody is just when you don't support anything, right? You're just saying it's to the fact, almost like by fiat. It is the case without supporting evidence. That they.
What was that? Ipsodictus or something?
Ipse dixit. IPSE-DIXIT, 2 words. Ipse dixit.
Oh, that's a new one.
Yeah, it means just to like basically by fiat, right? We're not giving any evidence. So when you have supporting evidence, right? When I cite these people that do agree with me, these experts, I've never said I'm right because of them. And again, I do think that Matt Dillon should know better than that. But again, I don't want to use new atheist TM to kind of. It does apply to a lot of these things do apply to them, but I really do think that I'm arguing more that new atheist TM are the people that are just the lower echelon everyday atheists that I run across, right? So
is that a bird?
That sounds like a bird, yeah.
That may have been my daughter screeching. I have a desktop mic and it's very sensitive, so it's picking up stuff through the floor from upstairs.
All right, so number 6, deny logic when it doesn't suit their position. Matt Slick does this as well, right? I mean, he actually told me one time, well, Steve, your logic is right on paper, but in the real world is basically what he said. Now, again, I don't think...
And he just kept repeating himself.
Yeah, I don't think logic and math have to conform with the real world, but make an argument for it, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, his whole tag argument was flawed. Theoretical bullshit. Scott Clifton had showed that, and Malpass had showed that, and Poole had showed that, and I had shown that. We all talked to Matt Slick about it and said, look, you have a fallacy here because, for one thing, he had a weird disjunction that he was trying to do an elimination of. He had P or Q, which is a disjunction, and he said, well, not Q, therefore P. It's like, wait a minute, what you're just saying is P, therefore P, which is, by the way, valid. But that's why I kept trying to tell him it's a trivial tautology. And I kept trying to explain to him there are other options between God accounting for the laws of logic, or what he calls not God accounting for the laws of logic, right? Because if you look at his argument, he's trying to run the argument, well, God accounts for it or something else does, which he puts under not God. But something else could be a lot of different things. So it could be the case that God or not God both account for it or neither account for it. There could be no accounting whatsoever for the laws of logic, right? So it can't be a tautology like I kept explaining to him. That God exists or God does not exist is a tautology. But you saying God accounts for the laws of logic or not God accounts for logic is not a tautology, because neither could. There could be no. There's been this could be brute fact. But he wasn't grasping this.
I've seen him change that, his usage, like equivocate between like, a deistic God and his particular. Once you press him on it, he's like, "Oh, I mean mine. I mean the Christian God."
I don't have a problem with that. I don't think there's equivocation if he's explaining it, because he goes by the classical theist approach, and I know like my friend Kenny Rhodes, Dr. Kenny Rhodes does as well. He is a classical theist. I understand what he means by that, and he understands when I say I'm not a classical theist, even though we use the term theist completely different. Guess what? We can have awesome dialogue with each other. Why? Because we understand the difference. I can step into his, or he can step into mine. It makes no difference. So that's we reach that point where it doesn't matter what the terms you use if you understand each other, as long as it doesn't lead to internal inconsistencies. And this is why this lack of belief atheism leads to internal inconsistencies. This is why I have an issue with it.
Yeah, the thing that drives me up the wall about presuppositionalists is them asking for accounting of things that are best applied as basic required beliefs for making sense of the universe. And they're like, account for this. How? Like,
yeah,
in order to account for it, you have to use it, which they're refusing to let you to do.
Real quick, Gerhard says, I have to hit the sack. It's late here in Germany. We're going to address my super chat within 10 minutes. I already did. I already did address your super chat, but I'll do it again because I appreciate the super chats, because it's been like really rough. He's the one that said for £10, Steve, this is a part of the ACA descriptions, quote, we define atheism as lack of belief in gods. This definition also encompasses what most people call agnosticism. Is all good now? No, it's not. The reason being is, even though under that definition, agnosticism would be a lack of belief, there are huge epistemic differences. Agnosticism should be fall under theism, not theism, not atheism, because what they're trying to do is, for demographic reasons, incorporate all agnostics into atheism. That is a true statement, by the way. Logically speaking, they are correct, but they don't. What they neglect to mention is that it is their defining of that, right? We define it that way. It is stipulative. It is atypical, right? They neglect to mention. They should say we define atheism as lack of belief in gods. This definition also would incorporate what I don't know what they mean by most people call agnosticism. I don't see that to be the case. I think that's particularly maybe false, but we understand that in academics or in philosophy, atheism is more normatively defined as a belief that God does not exist. And the reason I think they should do that is because if you go to college and you learn about these things, you're not going to be using the lack of belief definitions that ATA puts out. I've never seen any coursework, and I've looked at a lot of it out there. I've looked at I have Rutledge Philosophy 101. I have PDFs from different Utah universities in Utah, Oregon. I got some from New York, Regents, a whole bunch of places. Yeah, you know what? I've never seen it used that way. So I think they're doing it a service because they just want to do it for demographic reasons. So I don't think that's sufficient, Gerhard, in my opinion, to really resolve anything, right? They're just basically something we already know. We already knew that they define atheism that way. And it wouldn't. They say it encompasses what most people call agnosticism. Really? I like to know what they mean by that, actually. When I tell people agnosticism, I get all kinds of different things what people think it means, right? Or at least what they'll utilize, because the word has multiple different usages. So hope that answers your question. All right, moving on. But anyways, denying logic when it doesn't suit their position. Like I said, these people will say my argument's wrong, which is logical, but they don't explain why. Number 7, quote the Four Horsemen over peer-reviewed academic citations and/or journals, and think it is sufficient evidence for a philosophical claim. By the way, you can change this to quote Eric Debye, and now you're talking about flat Earth. Right? Mm-hmm. So what I meant by that is quoting these gentlemen's non-published works is fine, but it doesn't supersede things that have actually gone through a peer review. right? I mean, there's a lot of scientists out there that have written general, books. Okay, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But I cite academic peer-reviewed papers in context as much as possible. So when they say, well, but Dawkins says about this in philosophy, you're not giving me any kind of sufficient evidence that overrides what I've already been stated. He's not an expert in that field. It's not a published work. And even if it was, let's say hypothetically, one day, I hope to God, a new atheist says, here's a peer-reviewed paper that differs from what you say, Steve. Great. Now let's look for preponderance of the evidence, right? How many more papers can we find, right? That's what you would do in science, right? Why not philosophy? Because the only paper I've ever seen anybody ever quote me, ever, and this is I think once, or maybe twice, they quoted me Stephen Bullivant's work in the Oxford Handbook of Atheism. Yeah, I think a few times people have quoted that. Oh, well, they've referenced it. I don't know, remember if they quoted it. I'm trying to remember. But it doesn't matter. But they don't recognize that's an opinion piece. And his argument is that there's no established definition for philosophy and for atheism and philosophy. And he's not wrong. I've never claimed it's established. What I said is normative. Right? So.
Yeah, I will say this, that if someone ever came to me, even someone from quote unquote my side, and quoted Richard Dawkins on something philosophical, I'm not a violent person, but I'd slap them.
Well, like I said, you looked at the you've read my blog on Dawkins' scale, and yeah, I don't think it's a good scale. I mean, sure, if you want to run it as probabilistic things, okay, whatever. But I think that he makes some fundamental mistakes when he's trying to explain the categories that he's come up with, right? I don't mind it probabilistically. Carrier does a better job at that, though. So, all right. Number 8, have pretty much never read a philosophical paper in their lives. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, again, how many times have you argued with a new atheist TM that has cited a paper? Philosophical paper. I don't think I can even recall, except for maybe once or twice they quote Bullivant, who's, by the way, you may not know this, but Stephen Bullivant is a theist. Not that it matters much, but I don't think they even recognize that. So that's odd that an atheist is using a theist to support their position, but I mean, nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of weird sometimes.
My experience has been that an atheist is more likely to quote something if they're trying to go after evidence. They're less likely to go after philosophical stuff and more likely to quote something scientific, like from a biological perspective or something like that.
I mean, I've had some people tell me, well, philosophy is all about opinion. I'm like, look, there are objective measures to be had, even within philosophy. Clearly, if I say, look, solipsism is the position that that modal realism is true, that clearly is not a true statement. That is objectively false, right? So there are objective matters to be had. When I tell people, hey, there's an objective fact of the matter, that these are the terms, how they're normatively used, right, or best understood, that's something you can go verify. Go read a paper, and this is how those terms are mostly used. That doesn't always apply. The word objective, I've seen used 4 or 5 different times by different authors, sometimes not even the same way in the same paper.
Yeah, I think what I meant, I'm not sure who said what's the difference, but I think what I meant to say, if perhaps I was unclear, which is possible, is if you're talking with someone that says, like, okay, for example, a current Twitter/YouTube favorite, S.J. Thomason, right? She'll put out all the time that, humans aren't animals. It's not true. But I could quote something from, I could go into something from Richard Dawkins easier than I could go into something from a philosopher to demonstrate that. That's all I meant.
Yeah, I agree. 1 second. Talk about yourself for a second.
Can you determine truth by citing a source?
Well, I think it can lead you that way, right?
I mean,
I think it depends what we're talking about.
I guess maybe. I just don't I don't know that much about philosophy, so I'm the layman. I'm dumb, okay? So, but when I hear a lot of people citing sources all the time for everything, isn't there any kind of grounding that is put in place that that you don't need to cite sources? Like, it doesn't matter who it came from. What it matters is what was said.
I would think that applies to things that you're defining, but not necessarily to things that you're trying to tie as related to each other. You have to defend that somehow.
But you defend that by telling people where something came from rather than what it was, what it is?
Yeah, like if the citation is what defines a term. If the actual citation is what defines a term. Like if you go back to Darwin and he has a specific definition of animal and, the experts have, agreed upon that in modern day. You know what I mean?
I mean, sure, but then you have like consensus rather than just one quote from a guy.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the point of the citation, though. It points you toward a paper trail, so if you care to validate it yourself, you know where to look.
And all of the other citations, like people who know what they're talking about have cited this because they think this guy knows what he's talking about and can prove it.
It's one of the things that I talk about whenever we're doing a podcast or something like that. And I get in the topic of evolution with people and say, well, these are all these different areas of science. You can give citations from all of them, and they all converge on the same fact. So you can use the citation. I think Michael, I think you said it the best, is that you can use it as a marker, as a starting point to get to the rest of it. So you can paper trail. Sorry, is the paper trail the words you used to get there?
So one quick, I just got a really interesting message from somebody. I've asked him if I can talk about it here. I like to get people's submission, even though if I don't name the person, then I could kind of talk about whatever I want, right?
It's Keon. I'm just kidding.
He's asking for Cheshire.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
What's number 9, Steve?
Did Gerhard not? Did Gerhard not hear my answer? I answered twice. I'll tell you what this person wrote me in a second here. So let's move on to talk about number. Where are we at here? 7, 8.
9, I think, isn't it? Is it 9?
No, I don't think we're that high yet. I gotta go back here. All right. Yeah, number 9. You're right. Damn. Okay. But like I said, 8 is pretty powerful. Like I said, they're just like, well, you're just citing authorities. Well, if there's a biological discussion with the young Earth creationism, I expect them to have papers, right? All right. So, anyways, I just got those messages before I could do number 9 and 10. So, one of the persons I've known from a couple of these groups is an admin for a very big name group, right? I mean, he was in one of the bigger name ones. This was a group that was owned by C.W. Brown, who owns a lot of different groups, right? And they removed me from that one of their particular groups, and I had talked to C. Brown about it. Who, by the way, I want to have a conversation where we never really got it. A chance to, but this mod removed me, and I did talk to C. Brown a little bit about it, and he was going to call me, but anyways, this is what Mark says, and I asked if I can use his name and stuff, but he says, is this just now? He says, Steve, and I owe you an apology. I was exactly one of those admins you're talking about right now, and I was so wrong. There was so much I didn't know. I didn't know it. I've learned a lot, but mostly that there's a lot I don't. You were actually someone who prompted me to learn more. Again, my apologies for my previous behavior. That to me is one of the greatest things I ever hear from somebody. Not because they said I'm right. That's not the issue. It's not an ego thing. It's just that somebody took the time to willingly listen to learn and go further, right? Because that, I think, look, if your goal is to convince the theists they're wrong, if your goal is to tell younger creationists they're wrong, isn't to sit there and just say, I don't believe you. It's to learn about the topics, learn about the utilization of these terms that they're using, and then shove it up their ass, right? I mean, that's the whole goal for a lot of people. But, I mean, I'm not an atheist activist, but I am certainly somebody who wants to take younger creationism and abolish it from the earth, right? And so do you think that I could do that if I didn't understand things about younger creationism? Well, I'm fortunate. I happen to know a lot of the PhDs in younger creationism, so I do have access to them. But I mean, if I didn't learn about polonium halos, do you think I could have shoved that up, younger creationist ass on my presentation? No, I had to learn about it. I had a little bit of background, but it's the same thing in philosophy. When Darwin's, like, for example, and by the way, Mark's listening. Thank you, Mark, for that. Again, I'm very sincerely humbled, and I do much very appreciative of that. And there's really nothing you really have to apologize for. The fact that you want that you recognize there's a lot more out there to learn. By the way, we all did. I was there again 8 years ago. So I was that guy, right? I empathize with people that just say philosophy is full of shit. You're just sitting drinking scotch, smoking a stogie on a comfy chair, which by the way is pretty cool. But But yeah, I do fully understand that, so appreciate that immensely. But these are the kind of messages I get frequently from other people as well, that they say, "Hey, look, you've helped me become better at arguing my position, and I've become better at atheism and showing theists why their arguments are flawed, right? And if that's their goal, that's great. I mean, critical thinking can apply to be anywhere, right? I even want like young Earth creationists to be better critical thinkers, right? I mean, Wayne Fillmore, who left young Earth creationism when we had our debate on macroevolution, he didn't leave it because all of a sudden he learned biology. He also learned, oh wait, there's information here that I wasn't exposed to, and that Steve's telling me. So either Steve is making this shit up, or maybe it's something I should look into. Guess what he did? He looked into it and found out, whoa, wait a minute, macroevolution isn't what young Earth creationists are telling me it is. It is something that exists. It's something that doesn't take millions of years either. It can actually happen in a single generation due to polyploidy and whole genome duplication. But do you think a young Earth creationist is going to tell him that? No, he's not going to get the information he needs to change his position unless you know that information. Same thing with philosophy. When you have these atheist groups, and the ones I support, like for example, like Fully Deconverted, Ervan, I like that group a lot. Kevin Wadey's a great mod over there. I support Atheist Edge, Jim Hall and T.J. Tuttle and Courtney, Stewart. I mean, I think they're great people. I helped get Courtney onto In Time as thing for co-host for Nick. I support atheism in that regard, but only the ones that want to promote critical thinking. If they want to take it one step further to deconvert the theist, okay, that's not. I don't have a horse in that race, right? Does that kind of make sense to people? And I'm certainly not trying to convince anybody to agnosticism. I'm not proselytizing that either. I have created more atheists than I have agnostics, I think.
I think it really helps to have people further their understanding and poke a fingernail outside their paradigm.
Well, I need to say something to Mark. I'm really glad that you're here. I consider
you know who
this
he is, right? I mean, you know Mark. You know what I'm talking about?
Maybe.
Okay, you probably do.
He's
pretty well known.
I consider this a place of learning. I know that some people think that we're all like, Steve worshippers or something, but that's not what this is. And I'm really glad that you were able to get something out of things that Steve has said. I've gotten a shit ton from it. So I'm really glad that you were able to too.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been removed from groups for no reason before. He happened to be removed from one of the groups with really no cause. And this is the same thing that we're talking about right now with one of the other groups the mod for that other group is in this, very Discord. And even he had to admit to and other admins did. Steve did nothing wrong. I mean, Michael, did I actually violate any rule whatsoever?
The closest thing you could have come to would have been the insult rule, and even there, they ought to have given you a warning first. So
I don't think I directly insulted anybody. To me, like I said, if the most of I even say that, look, you're inept in a specific field, that to me is not insulting if it is demonstrable, especially. And people can say, Steve, you're inept when it comes to, let's say, sports. Okay, I agree with you. That's not an insult.
Yeah, no, like I said, I mean, of all the rules I went through that it might have applied to, that was the one where they might have been able to have an argument. But even still, it should have involved warnings rather than an outright insta-ban.
Yeah, and especially when somebody says, look, I'm an expert in this field, and I say, well, okay, can you demonstrate that you at least have some knowledge of it? And then they can't, and I say, well, I think you're inept. I'm sorry, that's not an insult to me.
I think that
Which is not, by the way, everybody, I don't think that happened in that group, but go ahead.
Yeah.
I think everybody in that group that we're talking about, they need to learn how to prize learning over knowing. They think that they know things, so they don't have to learn it, and that's very problematic. There's always something new to learn in every field. The world keeps spinning, and things keep coming out, and we learn new things all the time.
Fun fact: the more you learn about stuff, the more you realize you don't know a lot of things. I mean, it opens
exactly,
up, and that is a truism. I look into a topic, and I don't even get past the first base sometimes because I'm like, okay, I'm just barely learning about this, and I could probably spend another couple of years just learning some more, but I don't have the time to do it. But every topic out there is a lot to know. This is why people specialize, right? And I'm one of those people. I try to be a lot like my friend Jade West, who just, she was really good at a lot of different things, right? She's had a general understanding of a lot. I will never be like her because she was just that good, but she's what I aspire to, right? Or like Landon Curtin, look how broad he is, right? Dude's a mathematician. He's a computer scientist, astronomer. He has a wide variety of things that he finds interesting. I like that. I like to be very general, but I think critical thinking is one of the things that applies to all, right? It depends on what subject you like. And so I think that's why I don't do activism, for any specific ideology.
You put an argument in front of people and they don't even look at it. And that is a sign, as far as I'm concerned, that they're completely ignorant on the subject.
Even if you do, oh yeah, by the way, what up, I'm back. Even if you know something, that doesn't mean that you still can't learn a better way to argue about it. Being challenged on your ideas doesn't mean that you're necessarily even wrong. It just means you can learn different ways to communicate, learn about other people's perspectives, and also learn to be better at arguing your own position if you happen to be running an argument that is garbage.
Become a better teacher.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not the only one that's pointed out atheist bad arguments. Sir, the Skeptic has done a wonderful job pointing out some of those things as well. I mean, there are bad arguments to had by atheists just as much as there's bad arguments by theists, right? You have to be able to accept that fact. And so if you eliminate those bad arguments from atheism, what do you end up with? Better arguments out there, right? I mean, if you have 10 arguments out there,
it eliminates atheism, which seems to be the fear or the concern that I think a lot of these people have.
That seems irrational. I look at it this way: if atheism has like 10 arguments you hear all the time, and let's say 3 of them are bad, get rid of them and keep the 7 that are good, because now you have less that a theist can go look at this idiot atheist saying this really stupid argument, which by the way they have. Keep the 7 ones that are good. Like I'm telling you, like divine hiddenness is a good argument.
Or make your 3 arguments better.
That's fine too. Always improve.
Yeah.
But
I honestly don't think they understand what you're asking for when you say you have to justify the fact that you don't believe. I think they're looking at it from the same kind of rigor that a scientist would use to defend a theory or a hypothesis, and that's not really the
they
point.
need to get out of that mindset, because again, there's epistemology in science, there's epistemology in philosophy, there's methods in science, and there's a non-overlapping magisterium of that regard. I mean, you can't talk about really the science. You can't say, well, I'm a hypothesized God did it, right? That's excluded literally by Fiat because of methodological naturalism. That's what it's designed to do. That's what makes science powerful, because supernaturalism is just eliminated and says, look, there has to be a natural explanation, right? Or at least, they don't even posit that. What they posit is, if there is a natural explanation, let's find it. That's more the way science approaches it, right? So when people are out there going trying to use science inappropriately to philosophy like this and the God claim, I think there is a scientism that when theist says, oh, they're just committing scientism, which is the misuse of scientific methodology, I think that they're right on that sometimes, right? So get rid of those bad arguments, especially ones that they think are like really good. Can a God make a rock so heavy that he can't lift it? There's some problems with that. It's not a great argument. So
that's my favorite one.
Yeah, but it's the problem is that's already been like
I'm
long
fucking
reserved.
with you, Steve.
Yeah, it's been resolved, and a long time ago. What's called the principles of eternal verities. But damn.
Yeah, no, one of those things where if you're saying something is omnipotent, it kind of makes sense that it can only apply to things that are logically possible in the first place.
Well, it's logically possible when it is you're asking God to fail, and God is posited by the theist as somebody who cannot fail, right? So you
have to redefine it in terms of how it can fail, that it has a maximal property.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of them do. They do maximal great properties, right? And so, but like if I said, hey Cheshire, I'm going to give you a test. And you will know everything, right? And you cannot fail the test, and you get 100% on it. And then I say, hey Cheshire, you failed to fail the test, right? You failed to do something that you cannot do is not a proper argument, because by the positing Cheshire cannot fail by the fact she knows everything, she has to get 100%. So if you accuse her saying, hey, look, you got 100%, but you know what? You didn't fail the test. Therefore, I want you to fail. You can't argue that way. You can't fail something if you have no ability to fail it, right?
It sounds like something like Diogenes would say or something.
it's just weird that
ancient trolling.
You're asking an infallible being to fail.
It's the hey, anything that doesn't have or that stands on 2 legs and can walk on 2 legs is a human being. Runs in with a chicken. Look, a man.
Or worse is when like Arendt has this problem about categories. He defines humans as animals, as some kind of metaphysical. Can you mute real quick, Michael?
Yes, sorry, I didn't realize it was that sensitive.
It really, yeah, it's okay. He defines it as almost like a metaphysical necessity. Humans must be animals.
You could contrast this with what SJ said.
But there's a problem with that, obviously, because that's a synthetic category that we have, right? And so we will also say like there's brute animals, and even in biology we talk about animals differently than we do humans, even though biologically as a category we are animals. But for the context, if I say PETA is for animal rights, you don't think PETA is for human rights, right? It's not. There's a reason why we have differentiation in the category terms.
Mm-hmm.
But if you define human the way like even Arendt would, humans are bipedal by definition. He would agree with this, right? But that's a synthetic category. If you have a loss of a leg, which is called an accidental property, you could say, would you say, well, that person is no longer human? Of course not, right? Because it's an accidental property.
Mm-hmm.
So having two legs, being bipedal, is not a necessary component to be human in that regard. It's not a metaphysical necessity that we have two legs.
Yeah, it's like language game stuff, like with Arn and SJ. If you talk to them and got them to fully expound on what they mean by the label itself, they would not be talking about the same thing, because I think SJ thinks that anything that would equate humans with any other type of, cellular life form, she would just disagree categorically. She'd be like, no, that's impossible.
So
when it comes to Aaron, at least, when you're talking about the bipedalism, it's in that respect, it would be more like the definition of a clade, like what tetrapod means. And of course, there's some organisms that'll be born without limbs for whatever reason, but it's the relationship and the definition of being a member of that clade is a lot more than just has four limbs.
All right, so let me ask you that. Why doesn't he relate it that way? Look, when we talk about monophyletic fish, right? That group excludes tetrapods. Tetrapods has been polyphyletically removed from that line of phylogeny, right? That's by the way, completely arbitrary. There's no metaphysical necessity for that. But by convention, they do that because when we talk about fish, right, that is a group. That's not a clade. It's not even a line of phylogeny. It is a really loose group, is what it is. But if I say,
the word fish isn't actually a direct matchup to any particular clade.
Right.
The problem.
So if I say,
if you were going to define a clade as being a synonym for fish, you'd end up going for vertebrates. Probably.
Yeah.
And there's also, there's a couple of ichthyists and what are the lobefish called? The scarodop.
Depends how far back you want to go. You might go further back than that.
Yeah, lobe-finned fish.
Sarcopterygia,
lobe-finned fish, right? So we are Sarcopterygia in that regard. But when I say, if I go out to the pier and I'm out on the pier on the beach and I say I'm fishing, people know I'm not fishing for humans, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason why we have understanding of these terms. And so when Arn was talking to this theist one day in the foyer, the theist was trying to explain to him this. Humans are only animals because we have agreed upon them to be animals for a category in biology. It's not that's why it's not a necessity. And Arn's like, no, humans are animals. There is no other thing by necessity.
Who's that theologian that he
I kind of feel like
I don't know his name.
I don't feel like he's entirely wrong. It's the way he's making the point that's the issue. It's like from a scientific point of view, it's a category error, because if you look at the structure of what an animal is from the point of view of the cells, we are demonstrably animals.
Only because we set it up to be, right? That is a synthetic category.
What's
a human? Bipedal, chemohomotropic, multicellular? Go ahead.
There are reasons, though. There are reasons why it's set up that way. It's not arbitrary, right? So I think the problem that you'd be running into is you've got two people who are just talking past each other. They're just not talking about the same thing, period.
Oh, they were.
Yeah,
they totally were talking
past each other. The theist is coming at it from the point of view of like the religious category of what animal means.
No,
and it's not at all the same thing.
That's not what he was doing.
No, he was coming at it from like how do you identify a human being? And in biology, we identify in this way, but in social groups and in a more metaphysical sense, we categorize them differently. Like Steve was saying,
yeah, exactly. That was his
arm. Yeah. You're still a human. Well, why are you still a human? Why do we still regard you that way? And biology just isn't about that. So they're just completely talking past each other.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Steve, I need to break in for just 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a power outage here, and everything's hooked up to my backups, and I've got about 7 minutes
All right.
before I lose power.
All right.
So sadly, I
right.
better.
Let me say this real quick, then
Okay.
say what you got to say before you leave, because I don't want to leave you hanging. So real quick, so Jess was right on that. There is no metaphysical necessity for humans to be animals. We have categorized them as animals because that's the group that we have based upon, we know that humans are multicellular, we know they're chemohemotropic, we know that they're bipedal, we know they're tailless, all the things that Aaron was mentioning, sure. But that's because we've reached agreement that these are the categories, the name and what we want to call a human. Call an animal, right? But there are times where we would say
grouping and identifying things are useful. That's a useful thing for us to
it's
do.
utility, yeah. But the theists are trying to make the point to the Arn. It is not a metaphysical necessity for humans to be animals. Mm-hmm. It's just we are classifying them under that because of phylogeny, right? Which I think Arn would agree. But as Chess pointed out, they were talking. It wasn't so much that maybe even talking past each other because the theists were making perfectly good sense. Because I see Anthony Magnabosco in the background going, "Stop, Arn, just stop," But all right, Michael, go ahead. What you got before you have to leave?
Did he just hang up?
He may have just died.
He did.
Yeah,
He's gone.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Rip.
Anyways, I think eventually he's got to ask Cheshire to go on his pod. You got to get you back on this podcast. He wants us back on, so we got to find a time.
Yeah, I'm down.
All right.
I'm down for whatever.
All right. So
I think that Aaron runs into he gets on a train, and once he's on that train, he just goes. And it is a track with very little deviation. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it becomes problematic if he's not going the same direction as the person he's talking to. So they end up colliding into each other or just going past each other rather than actually having something that could theoretically be a more interesting discussion, but it's not the conversation. Neither of them, because I'm going to put this on both people. Aaron might not have... Not necessarily understood. It just wasn't the conversation he was having. But that falls on the theist as well, or whoever he was talking to also realize this is not the conversation that he's having right now. Realistically, the person who should be solving that is whoever's moderating.
Well, this was like there was outside of
informal discussion. Yeah, they just each other.
Well, that's why you should have like another person in the room being like, "Oh, hold on, guys."
He should have stepped in. But here's the thing.
That was sort of Aaron's first attempt at street epistemology.
It kind of was.
Yeah, I think Anthony Magnabosco said it was really bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. Yeah, I mean his attempts. I've seen him do it a couple different attempts. He did twice, I think. One of them
because it goes from trying to honestly, Socratically ask questions to like telling someone what something is, which is like that's like a sophist. That's not,
So I think Aaron will change his position. I will give him credit for that. He is right on that. The problem is he's like one of the hardest you need so much to just persuade him. And you
also need to talk to him in the right way.
I've seen him do it once, and he actually did it kind of after the fact. But this is on the whole disbelief, if I'm not mistaken. He finally came around and realized that I was right on that because then the argument was pretty sound. He's telling me that like disbelief isn't the negation of the proposition, right? Which I try to explain to him. Well, it actually is. This is what is understood in epistemology and in epistemic logic. When you say I disbelieve P, it is understood in the literature as I believe not P, right? And he just could not accept that. But then I showed him on American Atheist, their own page, where it says atheism is not the disbelief that God exists. Which, by the way, they're wrong on that, but at least they're using it the same way that I was explaining him, right? There's internal consistency here. So I said, Aaron, you're on the board of American Atheist. And here it is saying atheism is not the disbelief that God exists. Why would they be doing that unless disbelief is the positive case, right? He finally changed his position on that after just calling me all kinds of shit, right?
Yeah, you'll find that most people, regardless of education level, don't generally change their minds live when viewed by an audience.
This was on Facebook. He changed his position, I think. But Matt Dillahunty didn't. Matt Dillahunty had a caller call him up. This is what it started. The caller was like,
"No, I know. I'm not saying it's a universal, but generally people don't do it.
Yeah.
But that was. Matt has never corrected himself on that.
Yeah, Aaron tried to turn. He didn't want to address Steve's argument through Steve. He wanted to address it through, a proxy of a label, Mr. Agnostic.
Yeah, and by the way, his blog. I did a review of his blog, right? And I did a little Sophistry, I guess. I'm allowed a little bit of sophistry. I find if you're good at sophistry, which I'm not that great at it, but there's time to be sophistic. I have no problem with that.
Listen, everybody's allowed to have a little bit of fun sometimes. He was having fun with you, and you had fun back. It's totally
but his
legitimate.
blog
Everybody's
was
cool.
so bad. It was so even people in his own camp are like, "Oh, Aaron, just no." This
What are you talking about? I was there for that review. We did a video on it,
you're right,
and I
you're
was
right.
just like, "This reads like it was written by a 12-year-old."
Yeah, it was pretty
He's
bad.
being mad.
It was a bit bad, but I liked my review. I liked the blog I did on that. So okay, let's get through this real quick. So number 9, use mute, boot, admin, block, ghosting when shown to have been wrong. Again, I see this a lot. Ghosting is actually pretty popular too. I notice I have a lot of hanging threads where I'll be like, I just have like slam dunk on them, and then I never hear back from them.
Yeah, and Steve's been ghosted one too many times on Grindr.
This is true. Yeah. Hi, my name's Steve. Want to go out? And then it just ghosts me.
I would never ghost you, Steve.
Are you on Grindr?
Well, yeah, of course. That's how we met.
I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'm the worst gay guy in the entire world.
I know he is.
I really honestly, I had some people explain to me a while back, what it means, what entails if I wanted to become gay, and I was like, I don't think so.
We can just watch Kyle's video that nobody watched. I mean,
which one?
I actually make that joke that I was going to turn gay
No.
until Kyle
Okay.
told me the prerequisite requirements, and I was like, I changed my mind. I think I'll stay. So, but I see this a lot now. Look, I'm an admin too. I'm an admin in a lot of different groups, right? I'm in 40 different Facebook groups, even though I've been kicked out of a lot. But I'm an admin for quite a few. I'm an admin for Leah. I'm an admin for mine. I'm an admin for one or two others. So I understand that we all use these tools, but when you're discussing with somebody, if they're not violating the rules, you cannot mute and boot them. Now, again, in my own particular group, I make it very clear. This is my group. Fuck everybody else. I'm not playing this game any longer like I did with the Great Debate Community on G+. The one on Facebook's mine. And I have no problem if somebody says that. Look, if somebody says, this is my group and I'm going to run it the way I want and kick somebody, great. Somebody did that. It was actually the only... I said I wasn't even kicked from a theist group for having a bad argument, but I was kicked from a theist group merely because they wanted only theist. And that was the owner of the group. And I didn't complain about that. I was like, oh, okay. I get that. This is your group and you just want theist. Fine, whatever. That's your group, right? Run it the way the fuck you want. So the way I run the Facebook community on G+, it is my group. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to boot somebody if I think they're wrong. I'm going to boot somebody if they're like, for example, if you start doing anti-vaxxing, yeah, you're not going to stick around, clearly, right?
Yeah, there's specific rules, and the best way to do it is to set up a hierarchy, right? So whoever runs the group is the one who makes the final decision on permanently booting anybody, period. And that's the way it should be, unless the group decides to have something like no Holocaust denial. Or no,
which we have,
this particular. So that way, if that person even says that or brings that up, they get booted no matter what. If you have any of those like standoff, no, you are not doing this here, period. Except for those cases. Other than that, if you boot somebody or if you want somebody booted or you think somebody should booted, 1, you're not the one having a discussion with the person. 2, you build your case, as in like you take screenshots and you say, this is what this person's doing. Then you lay out, this is what rules they're breaking. And here's why I think they should be booted for these reasons. And here's screenshots of me giving them their warnings. And I'm also still not the one having the discussion. They've been timed out for X amount of time.
Yeah.
They came back, they're still breaking this rule. And then you give that off to the person running it or whatever admins the person has. You have an admin hierarchy, and whoever has the power to boot, or like, and I don't mean they can boot, I mean who's ever been given the responsibility to do so, and then that person makes that final decision. So the only one ever booting anybody is that person, and none of the mods should be complaining about whether that person does or does not get booted, because your arguments may or may not be convincing enough.
Yeah, my mods don't really have a problem with that, actually. Those one mod, a lot of people are just like, dude, this person is just killing your group. And I'm gonna call them out because I talked to them about it. Well, no, you know what? I'm not gonna call that person out. But there was one person that, if I get like 10 people messaging me going, dude, what up with this? I kicked out of the group. Somebody I've known for like 10 years, right? I was like, dude, you can't be doing this, right? Just because they disagree with you on a particular topic. Now they no longer are mod and they're cool about that, but yeah, I think you're right on that. That look, if I'll mute somebody after I've given them like 3 opportunities. If I'll say, look, can you give me any support for your claim here? And if they don't, then I'm like, okay, take 24 hours to think about it, right? I got no problem with that, right? Because if I say, hey, it is true, and somebody said this, and somebody says, well, what's your evidence for this? And I say, some rhetoric, and I keep doing it, then yeah, mute me. That's how you should use mute controls. But when new atheists find somebody like myself that can articulate these things and provide evidence, and then they mute me only because it violates their preciously held dogmatic beliefs, that's a problem.
Yeah, if you just want to be an atheist support group, then just be that. That's fine. If you want to have a circle jerk, that's okay. You can have that, but don't pretend you're something else.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened in the atheist community of Austin page, right? Because I'm on the atheist experience page, and Tangel, who I have a lot of respect for, I really like her. And she's an admin, and she'd been moving one day. She brought me back the next day. But, they have gotten to the point where they don't want to remove people merely for disagreeing. And that took a lot of time. And by the way, I credit Rationality Rules kerfluffle for that. But they used to just boot people left and right, no matter what. If the admins there didn't agree with you, you're gone. But then they realized...
That reminds me of the Lion's Den.
Do you remember those days?
Oh, God.
Do you remember the days of atheist experience where they were just like... Damn, boot. And then they lost memberships, and then people fractured, and they weren't getting the support. And yeah, it was pretty bad. You can't run a group that way. Like Cheshire says, don't run a group and pretend it's something not. If they were to say, look, we're an atheist community, and you have to, to think in lockstep with us. And if you don't, we're going to kick you out. Okay, you can run it that way. I don't have a complaint about that. That's your group. But don't pretend to be something you're not. Have you ever had the
misfortune of being a member of one of the groups run by Daniel Quinones?
I do not. What is his group?
He's.
Well, I don't know. I might. I'm in 40 different groups, man. Good God.
They're all of his groups are not oriented towards like an honest discussion. They're basically Christian echo chambers that invite atheists in to try to tear them to pieces.
Oh, I hate that kind of shit.
It's a shit show from day one.
Yeah, it's okay to have support groups, and it's okay to have groups that are just for people who basically agree with you. That's okay. That there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to have groups that are not really about open and honest discussion, or even groups that aren't about discussion at all. That's okay. Just don't lie to people. Just don't pretend you are.
Yeah, he's actually not the worst offender. There's a couple of people that tend to follow him around that are much worse.
Yeah.
Because he's encouraging the kind of behavior.
Yeah.
So let's get through this number 10 real quick. I know we got a rum of coke coming up here in an hour or so. Number 10, attack the person's character to try to diminish their argument when they can't actually show the person's argument to be wrong, mostly because they don't understand it. See number 2, and of course, and have no experience to support the position. Number 7. And the reason I say this one is I see this a lot too. Again, my name is on videos every day. People have used my name every day in a video just about for the last, I don't know how long, right? It doesn't matter what the hell the topic is. They can talk about CV19, Steve McRae exposed. They could be talking about 9/11, Steve exposed.
I've been throwing Steve's name in my hashtag even when he's not related.
You're not the only one. I just the other day I actually put my name in to see what was. I was just curious what's out there, and I'm getting all these people out there that in their hashtag. They're using my name in their metadata and stuff, or just their videos come up when attached to my name, and I'm like, interesting. And like SJ's, you put my name in SJ's videos comes up, even though I'm not even that particular videos, which is fine. I don't mind it, but it's just weird. But yeah,
I don't even want to know what comes up if I get searched.
If you're
I just
mentioned
don't
in the
even want to
comments
know.
of a video,
we're gonna do that on live. We'll have to figure it out. I'll put Cheshire's name in and see what we can find.
Oh, fuck.
But yeah, but this is what they do. They try to attack my credibility and say, well, Steve's a bean poopy head. So I get two things: either Steve's nasty and mean, therefore his arguments were wrong, or Steve's a big fat liar. Okay, the first one, let's assume that's true. By the way, I'm one of the nicest people in the world. I think, my friends.
Steve is way too fucking nice. I swear to God. The amount of times I have to be like, no,
lying.
Steve, fuck this person.
She ain't lying, right? She's not even kidding. This really bothers me because, again, my whole life, I have people on my Facebook page that I've known since I was a baby. I have two babysitters that are still my friends. I try to be a nice person to get along with people. But when people like, say, okay, let's say I'm a condescending, smug, rude, arrogant asshole, and I'm just a piece of shit. Okay, great. Let's assume that, right? Let's take an arguendo. Does that make my argument wrong? Of course
No.
not, right? But the other one is that Steve's a liar. Okay, let's say I lie. Let's say I'm a pathological liar and I lie every fucking day of my life. Does that again make my arguments wrong? No, but it does. It diminishes my credibility. You can't trust Steve, therefore his arguments are wrong. But that's not how it should work. You can say Steve's a liar, therefore, he has some shitty positions, on whatever, and I wouldn't watch his shit. Okay, great.
You could say Steve's a liar, so when he cites a source, double check it.
There you go. That's perfectly fine too, because there is a genetic fallacy behind it. Now, granted, I'm not gonna say I'm guilty.
Of course, you
of
need
this,
to demonstrate that Steve has actually lied.
I'm less likely. Well, here's the thing. I'm less likely to believe people that I know are demonstrable liars. Like, for example, if somebody says, Dean estimated this, that, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to triple check it, right? If somebody says quantum eraser, this, that, or that, I'm going to triple check it, right? And by the way, both those guys use my name frequently, and I don't know why. I haven't talked to Quantum Eraser in 3 years. Somebody the other day is like, Quantum Eraser is making videos about you. Okay, why? I mean, his name, we call him Independent Variable John. From years ago. I didn't even thought, he hasn't been a blip in my head until somebody messaged me the other day. And I'm like, why is he making videos about me? Hashtag Steve McRae. Okay.
People get a little bit confused because genetic reasoning can be valid when you're trying to figure out which sources to look for. You're not going to go to, a creationist source when you're looking for scientific people, for instance.
Sure.
And it's not to say that they're necessarily wrong about everything they say, but why would you go there?
Oh, by the way,
you're not going to find. You're not going to find what the information you're looking for. Not in that. Not in like a biased cherry picking way, but in a I'm looking for this specific information, and it's just go. This is the best way to find it.
Yeah. I want to find out how to be the most incorrect I can be.
There are people out there that are so inconsistent, or I should say, so consistently wrong. Would take whatever they say and just take 180 degrees opposite, and you're probably good to go.
Oh, I straight up have I have a mantra for that. There's one person that if I'm ever if they're involved in a situation or they're commenting on a situation and I don't know what the situation is, poor Keon.
Poor Keon. Yeah, I knew you were going to be talking about Keon. Keon is legit wrong every single time. No, I'll say it.
Oh my God. If there is ever a situation that you see Keon commenting on,
he's wrong.
And you don't know what's going on in the situation, just choose the opposite of whatever Keon's saying.
Every single time. That's why I'm thinking he's got to be brilliant. I think he'd be doing that on purpose, I think. Nobody could be even random. You have to get right sometime, right? No, he's right though.
You'd think you would fucking think that some of the people that we've dealt with who have dealt with Keon, who have agreed with this rule, would start to question themselves when Keon is agreeing with them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Piper wants to run an argument by me real quick. So, anyways, let's get through those. So we're through those 10. I might modify them a little bit, but those are mine for trademark Atheist TM, which, by the way, I didn't come up with. That is obviously long been standing, so I'm using that, but I'm using it as the people that follow the more content creators, right? I don't want to put I don't want to put New Atheist TM as Arn and Dill so much is because they don't argument by meme, right? So it doesn't apply to them. But there are other things about that these things that would apply to them. So maybe you just say maybe they are New Atheist TM, but maybe not all of these have to apply, right? It's not like all or nothing. If you meet like the vast majority of these, you're probably a New Atheist TM. So yeah, maybe I'll put Arn and Delonte under this then, if you want to do that. So I haven't watched your video yet, Dark. But I guess Dark Master made a video in support of me. That's rare. I know, right? It's like, really? And by the way, I didn't even tell him to. I guess the new what is it? The accusations out there is, well, the new accusations out there is I tell people what videos to make. I guess Kim from Unveiling the Mask. I guess I tell her every day what video to make, and I'm like, wait a minute. I have never once told her what to put in a video. never
Oh
sent her
my
any
god,
video.
that would be so time consuming trying to run that, like trying to manage that many videos
I've
about
never
who
done it
puts
to
what
anybody.
video when.
You know,
Like the amount of manpower and organization skills that Steve does not have to do that.
He's like
wait,
Brahma
I've
or
got
something.
managerial skills. I've been a manager, but I'm not as organized as you are. You're really like over the top. She's one of those people like you play a game, right? And you know how you have like you have the ability to do macro or micro level management, like SimCity. She has micro level and the micro level. That's how she would do, right? Kiwasa 5001. Well, being consistently wrong is at least consistent. That's good, right? I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, Keon can make a valuable resource by, being like, not that thing.
Hopefully, I know Mark's still listening. I will add you on Discord when I get a chance here. And we'll set up another time because I like to know his story on it. And it sounds from he's just told me, he sounds like he's done the same thing I've seen a lot of people do. Is they took a step backwards and they said, you know what, let me regroup. This is exactly what happened with when I did that debate on macroevolution with Wayne Fillmore. He legit took a step back and said, wait a minute, I need to reevaluate things. And now he wrote for BioLogos. BioLogos ran one of his blogs that he talked about me and his conversion out of Young Earth creationism. And so when I mention with names like Dillahunty and Arn and all these people that have actual influence on people, which they do, and I've changed the minds of people, this is the most humbling thing I could ever imagine. I would never have been imagined 8 years ago that I'd be in a position to do that. This is why I don't look at the shit people put out, like the videos that are just derogatory and inflammatory and just for views, because I have no interest in them, because that's not my audience. The people who want to watch those things are not my audience. The people who want to learn, the people who want to be a part of the conversations and change the dialogue, like Michael's not on here. But one of the greatest things he told me today was he started having his own arguments. New shit.
Right.
You don't
Right.
find, and not everybody can do that, but hey, when you can, that's amazing.
Well, it makes for more engagement, more entertaining. It's like what happened to Flat Earth? Flat Earth has run out of arguments, so it's not as interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is something that I would absolutely love to see, and if we could work forward towards it, it would be amazing, and it would be a revamp of. You guys remember the old days? We were talking about the Four Horsemen earlier, but they did debates. To take what they did and shift it into discussions would be amazing.
Yes, I agree.
I would love to see that.
I would hate to see debates. I would love to see discussions.
But I mean, like with the traveling and going to and doing audiences and doing like touring and having these like big we're going to this cathedral to talk to this bishop about whatever to make an action and have it instead of having the debate is Catholicism an overall good for humanity, have a discussion about it.
Yeah, I can't. You know what? I hate. I really hate when I can't think of a word that I should know, and for the life of me, I draw a blank, and it bugs the shit out of me. It's one of the most annoying things about these discussions is when I forget something. But I'm just going to ask because I just cannot, for the life of me, think what the hell it is. And when you tell me, I'm going to go, okay, I'm an idiot. Anybody who does street epistemology might know this. What is it that Matthew Bosco and Latin causes that moment of pause where you stop what you're thinking? It starts with an A. Like it's not a praxis, but it's very similar. Does anybody know what is that word? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Ataxia? No.
That's when you can't walk properly.
Yeah, that's when you have a weird gait, right? Something like that. But I can't remember the term that they use in street epistemology that you look for, where this person stops what they're doing and they kind of think. Oh, like for example, I saw it happen in one of those videos where he had asked, and I mentioned this before. He was talking to somebody who believed that like gems and minerals had special properties, and he had asked her, well, what is it that makes? I think it was like, what makes hematite good for the blood? What is it prescriptively does this, right? Because there has to be some kind of law in the universe that makes this to be the case. Like, why does things fall to the ground? Law of gravity. What is it that prescriptively makes hematite good for the blood? Because it seems like, if you learn about these things, they've been descriptively told to you, right? You never tested these things to find a property to explain why hematite is good for the blood. You've just been told by people, hey, here's a gem. It's good for the blood. Just like, nobody's ever learned anything about Superman by discovery, right? You've learned about Superman because somebody's told you about Superman, right?
Mhm.
And she thought about this. She's like, I don't know, right? And maybe that might lead her out of these irrational beliefs of, hey, I'm a hematite being good for the blood, right? Because it's not justifiable. This is what street epistemology undermines, is justification, which I think is fine. They've come a long way. I think when they started, there were some problems there, but they've come a long way. And the whole goal of them is to change the person's mind, is to attack the justifications of their beliefs. That's what I do. I got no problem with that. I think that's fine to have people reevaluate why they believe certain things, right? Because if not, you are going to have probably a lot more irrational or unjustified beliefs in your ontology, or should be your epistemology.
Well, and
Even
how
though
are you
there's
ever supposed to
relative-
know
I-
that?
I
How are
found
you
the
supposed to
term.
know and figure it out if you don't talk to people, if nobody questions it?
Yeah.
The term is aporia.
Aporia, thank you. God damn it.
See, I was going to guess Aplex Legends, but okay.
Now, I remember, see, here's the thing. I
Good
remember the
guess.
first letter, right? I just couldn't think of the term aporia. And I should know this, so I apologize.
When Steve and I made up, we got to play
Is it
category.
the one
God.
where they see patterns that aren't there?
No, that's
No.
there's pareidolia and apophenia. When,
Okay.
pareidolia is where you see
I-
like
I-
like faces, but that's
Pareidolia, yep.
pareidolia. Yeah, when you see
Just
faces
saying,
in something, but that's a form of
saw some patterns that weren't there.
yeah, pareidolia. Yeah, but pareidolia, like I said, is a form of apophenia, isn't it?
I don't know these words.
Pareidolia is the
Unbelievable.
human tendency to see certain types of patterns that are even vaguely reminiscent of the pattern, even when
Right.
they're not there.
Yeah, but
Like-
apophenia is showing pattern. For example, I know people that are very good at data, looking at data and looking for patterns, right? But a lot of that could be
Oh.
apophenia, is when you're seeing patterns in information that aren't quite there. Pareidolia is a subset of apophenia because pareidolia is seeing the pattern of faces, even though it's not quite there, right? Even though it's not real.
But
face.
also,
I don't think
pareidolia
it's strictly
also applies
restricted to
to,
faces, but it's
yeah,
like
it
social.
No, it
applies
doesn't have to be
to
faces.
auditory
Yeah, it does,
also.
Yeah.
just you can see, if you look and you see a mouse in the sky and clouds, that's pareidolia. It doesn't have to be a face.
It also applies to
Yeah.
non-schizoaffective or non-schizophrenic voice hearing.
When they're hearing things that they're so it's like
They think it's a voice, but it's really some other auditory stimuli.
Right,
that
okay.
is-
Yeah,
I gotcha.
especially if you're like listening to some kind of audio source like a white noise or something.
I gotcha. All right.
The difference
So-
between the schizo and the pareidolia version is there's actually a stimulus as opposed to their brain making it up. You know?
I never learned anything on Steve's channels.
Neither do I. No, I learn a lot on my channels when I listen. I listen to people like like when Canadian Atheist comes in. When Mike came in, I've listened to him numerous times. He's been in my channel, and it's like anything else. You learn to be better at discussions because if you try to change the minds of people, you have to do it in multiple different ways. And I'm trying very desperately to take different approaches with different people. Although there are certain people I'm just going
You mean to be good at something, you need to practice? Is that
Yeah,
what you
right?
just said?
That sounds like a surprise.
Yeah.
This is not
I'm
a thing
not-
I was taught.
If I'm not immediately good at something, I just drop it.
So okay, so he wants me. Parroting wants me to evaluate his argument, but I don't know why he just doesn't say it.
That's why I never learned how to walk.
Didn't
I didn't learn
practice.
how to ride a bike until I
That
was
chair looks
11.
super comfortable.
Yeah. Parroting, I might have to do another video on that. That's going to be too much to get into with Occam's razor and error theory. I don't want to get into that right now. But you have it. You have it there, so I'll look at it and see what I do on it.
We'll do it on Monday.
You want to talk about error theory?
Hooray.
Nah, I don't care.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know what we're doing on Monday.
they're going to say I don't know what error theory is. I was like, well, okay, yeah, I don't expect you to know what error theory is. A lot of people don't.
Is that
theory
related
of-
to statistics and probability?
No, error theory is Mackey's error theory, where there's a problem with things like stealing is wrong because there's no property of stealing to instantiate it. So all propositions relating to morality are false.
I'm gonna immediately change my position on a live air and say we're not doing that on Monday.
It's a meta-ethical position, but since I tend to I tend to more realism anyways now. Although I did before I got into error theory because I don't think Mackey's that wrong. I think it's a good way to look at morality, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. So
I think that people maybe need to back off a little bit of being so concerned about changing their position on air, because I think that was a good point. But on top of it, you don't necessarily want to change your position off air or on air because you need time to process and think about something that somebody said to you. So what is wrong with saying, hey, you know what, that's actually a really good point. I'm going to take some more time to think about that later, and in the meantime, let's continue the discussion.
I think that's the best way to do it.
Back to you.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I look. I remember way back when I had made that same argument to people, and it was just like, look, if you're an interlocutor, the best you're going to get out of them at the moment is, hey, you possibly made a valid point. Let me ponder that. Let me mull it over. Let me think about it. I don't
have that source on me right now, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I take that as not like an argumental win, but I take it as an epistemic win. As far as
it's a compliment at least.
It's great. If you've motivated somebody to do that, you've done good. You've done good. They don't even have to change their position.
And it's not even a loss on their part. It's just something that they either haven't come across yet or didn't think about. Yes. You can't think of everything, and it's not a bad thing if you're like, oh, you know what, I didn't consider that, or hey, you know what, you've actually presented this in a way that I would love to either continue this part of the discussion later on and find out more, or look into it more myself, et cetera, and then maybe make a decision later on about whether or not it did change your position.
I do it all the time to people that,
or why it didn't if it doesn't, upon further scrutiny, because that would be really interesting.
Is a critical thinking cult a paradox?
It might be.
It's an oxymoron, at least.
I really need to check my direct messages on Discord more often. Oh my god, I got so many I didn't even realize. You know?
Yeah, I sent you a little file that was just a dump of the rules.
I got one from Objectively Dan. I didn't even realize I had.
I just wanted to make sure you'd have a copy of the rules of the group in case you couldn't see them anymore, because they think they blocked you.
Oh, they did. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
Steve's a big, meaty, poopy head.
Look, it's fine. The person who did so technically had the authority to do it, and they probably had some rationale. So I wasn't gonna, divulge the contents of the admin chat in wholesale.
I would expect them to. That's no big deal.
Yeah. But I definitely attempted to advance your case to the extent I thought it was fair to do so, and I wasn't the only one. So.
Well, probably more than I got out of YouTube. That's for damn sure. Because
yeah, there was actually active discussion. There were some people on both sides, so it wasn't like they were wholesale attacking you. Although there was some unfair shit said in there.
I've got a lot more.
But were they all good people on both sides?
I am not unaware of the fact that I have a lot of good people that do fight for me and these positions. And it's not so much that hey, look, they think I'm a wonderful guy or they're my besties, because I do have a lot of people that are great friends of mine. I adore Chess. She's one of my besties, right? But she doesn't fight me because she's for me because I'm her bestie. She happens to agree with these positions and when it comes to critical thinking, right? But if I have a bad argument,
either
she's
I
not gonna,
agree with the position, or I agree with your position, or I think the angle that these people are coming at it is garbage.
Fair enough. Okay, I can deal with that.
Some people that come after Steve are real living dumpster fires, and I love going after that. Oh my god!
I actually send them to Mr. Serious once in a while. Like I'll come across one and I'm like, here, have fun.
I bet he loves that, doesn't he?
Oh God, I love dumpster fires.
Mark, I can't find your message to me though. I don't know if I just lost in Discord.
It's probably after all the dick pics that I sent you.
I have those special file for that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I've spent the whole time we've been discussing this, by the way, resetting up my data science environment on my computer.
Oh my god, I really thought you were going to say I spent this whole time taking pictures of my dick so I can send them to you.
No, that would have been funnier. No, I have a job interview on Monday, and I let my, well, funny enough, it's called Anaconda. The Anaconda package got quite stale.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I had to basically purge everything off my computer and start installing it all from scratch.
Demonetized.
Oh, that's way too appropriate.
I can tell you right now, if you're trying to get a hold of me on Discord most of the time, I'm not going to miss your message for at least a week or two. I've actually put out the best ways to contact me, and Discord was like rock bottom.
That's what I say with my email.
Yeah, I'm a bit on the opposite. I keep Discord open on my personal computer all the time.
Yeah, you're way more likely to get me on Discord than you will even via email. Like, I'll get the email eventually, probably.
I think Twitter is most common nowadays.
And I'm Mr. Serious here. I am attention starved, so send me anything in any way, shape, or form, and I'll get back to you within seconds, even if I'm dead asleep.
Yeah.
Feels bad, man.
Did that sound like really desperate?
It is,
It did.
but it's fine.
Okay, good. That's what I was waiting for.
Talk to me. I'm bored.
I'm telling you, I can't find a damn thing on Discord.
Whatever. At least he finally started using it. Dear Lord.
I know
Yeah.
you and Bull will push me in.
I mean, hell, I used to prefer Skype, and then Microsoft acquired it, and the interface took a dive.
Is that what happened to it?
Yes.
Everything makes so much more sense now.
They felt
like
it necessary to completely redesign the UI, although I cannot for the life of me understand why they made the choices they made, because even if they wanted to do that, they didn't have to give it this weird interface that even I have trouble navigating. Like, I know where the shit is, but it's just unnecessarily complicated.
You mean like YouTube Studio Beta?
Probably.
God, some people. I like to meet the people that actually design this shit.
Introducing a new way to mangle your videos.
It's fucking ridiculous. It's not intuitive, and it's just crap.
It's the same guy who told you to go talk to the guy who, scammed you and stole your channel.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Just ask
same
him
guy.
nicely,
go talk to
and he'll give it back.
Go talk to the fraudster. I'm sure he'll be like just happy to give it back, right? Oh,
Like-
you were hacked. Let's go call the hacker, man.
Like, I'll give the Microsoft team one thing. Like, the old interface for Skype was very sort of 90s and dated and old, but what they replaced it with isn't even as intuitive as Office, like the ribbons and stuff. Even though I don't like those, they're at least intuitive. Skype's new interface is just, like, they must have been on some cocktail of drugs when they came up with it.
I am not a
It's
fan of the
minimalist.
ribbons either.
They should have gone back to like a skeuomorphic design and just made everything like physical buttons and like
Can I
A
just have
rotary
MSN
phone.
back?
Oh
That'd
my
be
God,
great.
I've got 20 pending friends requests.
I'm one of them.
I'm probably one of them
Manya
as
is
well.
one of them.
I know.
Manya
I
is
sent you
one
a
of
friend
them.
request like a year ago.
I just found Matt. Mikey. Oh my God, Mr. Serious. I just found yours. I'm not, dudes. What I'm telling you, I don't know Discord, and I haven't nepped on it. I'm okay with that. I'm not bullshitting. I'm not trying to blow anybody off at all. People like one person messaged me, "Why are you so stubborn?" I'm like, "What the fuck, man? I didn't just saw your message, man. This was back on March 25th. He sent it. I am not exaggerating in any of this. I literally just accepted Mr. Serious's, Manya's, and Mikey Fammon's friendship request.
Yeah, I'm probably
Oh my
down near the
God.
bottom because I did it like 2 or 3 days ago.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing he did. I didn't know Steve was my friend until just now.
Exactly, and well,
whoa.
in name only.
Oh, yeah.
No. Discord's interface is clunky, but it's at least mostly intuitive.
I had someone be pissy at me because I didn't get back to them about a commission because they were emailing me, and I told them already that I don't do email very well. And then they sent me something talking about like their mental illness and how dare I treat a customer, blah, blah, blah. I told them to lose my number.
Dude, that person emailed me.
Wow.
Me, and I'm like, what? Yeah, there's this long 5-page diatribe about you, and I'm like, I am not reading in this, and I don't care.
I'd be like,
TLDR.
hey, do you want your money
yeah.
back? Because I don't want to deal with this.
I was like, TLDR. I was like, oh my God, this is like weird. Yeah.
Well, not to be mean, but that sounds like a hilarious read.
I have the email. I'll forward it to you, Chesh. But the reason I didn't bring it to your attention is because I was like, because he already said he had talked to you, and I'm like, okay, fine. And I figured it was resolved, but I'm like, I kind of forgot about it, but I was like, holy shit, now that you mention it.
Oh, no. This is a different one. You're talking about a different one. You're talking about...
wait, really?
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is a different one because
Get the
I
fuck
know the one
out.
you're talking about. He copy and pasted and sent me the exact same thing he sent to you.
Oh.
Wow. Yeah. He said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we are talking about a different one. Which, okay. Goddamn. How many people do you have up your ass?
How big is
All
my
of them.
ass?
I don't know.
Well, figure fit everybody in this Discord in it.
No, like they've got all of them. 7 billion people.
Not enough to be a fungible commodity, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to have more
Well,
than one. I don't know. Is that think about that? I actually had thought about that. Did you for a fungible commodity? Wouldn't you have to have more than one because you got to be exchanged for the same or similar goods? If you can't do it for the same, well, it isn't or.
What do you do if a piece of a thing is the same value as the entire thing itself?
Well, fungible just means you can trade it for a similar quantity of something, right?
I mean, isn't it technically always the case? Because
$1,
the entire thing is also a piece of the thing. It's just 100% sized piece.
Yeah, there you go.
Are we still talking about my ass?
We're always talking about your ass.
Yes.
In some weird way, your ass is always the part of the discussion. It's just that we have words.
It's because of its size and its own gravitational pull that it just pulls discussion towards.
when we say like atheism, we're talking about an ass cheek. When we say epistemology, we're talking about the crack. We have.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
There are terms for this.
There are terms.
Mm-hmm.
This is why you got to understand the context of the conversation.
Right.
Just as so gross. How dare she let men talk about her like this? Bitch, I brought it up. Oh, how dare she bring it up? She must be starved for attention.
Oh god, are we getting into the whole gamer girl bullshit that people pull up now?
Oh my god, I don't make enough money to be called a gamer girl. Please pay me more.
I know.
That's because you don't show
enough.
There's
a ton of people on
you gotta get a game.
There's a ton of people who get mad at girls on Twitch if they happen to have tits. It is just like, come on, really?
Begone thought.
Exactly.
Begone thought. Make me.
Twitch used to be good.
That's not to say that there aren't valid, criticisms of certain Twitch users, but they tend to collectivize the entire argument, just like everything else, political, religion. They just group everyone together and smear everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, they lose sight of like any actual argument. You can say that I don't like this person as a streamer because I just don't. It doesn't appeal to me with that much cleavage showing it for whatever reason. That's fine, but that's a personal preference. That's not an issue with their streaming. If you don't like their streaming because they are bad at a game, that doesn't mean they still shouldn't be streaming. Sometimes watching people being garbage at game, it's not the answer is that most of that kind of stuff is subjective.
Well, I mean, I think it would be a different in Twitch's case if they didn't actively let people break the rules like constantly, and then if somebody complains about one of their thoughts, they get banned just for complaining. Like
I said, there's valid complaints. It's just the way they end up getting packaged.
I think there's also something to be said for like the entire how bullshit it was that Twitch was like, oh no, we quote unquote don't even want to have this kind of content on our streaming service, but men are allowed to do it. And it was like, wait, hold on. It's like it did this weird swing where it swung the whole way and then it swung back and it just didn't do anything about it. It's like, just take the rule out then. Jesus.
Gaming. If it was better at games, like I only thing I would ever stream that I was actually enjoying like teamwork stuff was like when we were doing raids and especially PvP. Like I would do PvP and we'd stream some of that. That would be fun.
Just to put it in perspective about bad gamers, my current Steam handle is actual trash for a reason.
Oh yeah, how long was my Twitter trash goblin?
It's like, I don't pretend I'm good at shit. I'm terrible.
My favorite is when people are like expecting like high morals or high standards out of me, and I'm like, bitch, I rickrolled people at the beginning of the decade. I don't know what you want from me.
And honestly, I actually liked being rickrolled because I like the song. It's the duck roll thing that pissed me off. That thing was just visually horrifying.
And speaking of trash gamers, I'm playing Ori and the Blind Forest like every night-ish. So, swing on by and see me be trash. And I'm really bad at it.
If you go to Epic Games, they've been giving away, I guess because of all this isolation
zombie
stuff,
game.
They've been giving away free games like every other day. And a couple of them pretty good so far. Like I downloaded War Dogs was free, but they have a new game that's free today. So check out Epic Games because free's free, right?
Kitty Lane has...
They're basically trying to give people a reason to pay attention to their store, and I can't blame them for that. They've made some deals that I've had issues with. Epic Games Launcher.
Yeah,
They,
well,
like-
Origin used to give it on the house, and even Steam has some free games too, obviously. But,
I can't fault them for a lot of what they've been doing. I just felt like there were certain deals that they ended up making that were unethical because of the way they went down. But by and large, it's not like Steam hasn't done bullshit either. So
yeah, I mean, but I understand why they do it. A lot of these, they probably give away games that are probably not making them a lot of money, but it does draw attention to their platform, right?
which is what they need right now because they're trying to compete with Steam. And as much as I don't particularly like the store the way it's currently set up, Steam does need competition because it's turning into a cesspit.
Oh yeah.
Can't compete with Steam.
You're not a true gamer if you don't have Steam. Ask Reds. I mean, he doesn't get that.
Yeah.
Got to get Steam.
It is true.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, a lot of the free, like for example, I streamed Fishing Plans the other day for a free game. That's not bad. I mean, granted, I mean, I'm not going to be paying money for it because I'm not that much into it. But if you just want something to play for a little while and chill,
The best thing that Minecraft ever did was make all of the DLC free. You buy the game once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and honestly, that wasn't even them per se. A lot of what you might consider DLC is actually the modding community.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, we were
Like
lucky
the
that it was.
Skyrim mods. If Skyrim officially updated all the mods that go out.
We were frankly lucky that Mojang was Mojang because if this was owned by Microsoft when it was first released, we would have been legally prohibited from making mods.
Oh yeah, because it's licensed. I mean, some of these games they really do that. The ones that make it big are the ones that say, hey, you know what? Take the code, modify it, do what you want, make mod, go for it. Those are the ones that get really popular.
Dota and League of Legends, two of the largest competitive gaming scenes on the planet, both mods.
Yeah. The main problem that Minecraft had, I'm a huge Minecraft fan. The main problem I had with it all along was that they used Java. And because of that, the VM is such a pain in the neck to get to work properly.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
I have similar problems with the genome analysis toolkit because it also runs on Java. It's very awesome at what it does, but the VM is a pain. That's not even their fault. It's originally Sun and now Oracle.
Didn't it make it easier to mod it though?
It did. That's why we were able to get mods because they were able to use reflection to inject package information and hooks and such. It's not a bad thing overall, but they could have also. It probably would have been easier for Mojang to build in proper mod support if they had used a framework rather than using Java to build everything from the ground up.
What system is it built on now in the new edition that came out?
I refuse to play the new edition because you can't add mods to it.
Hey, because we've
varied off the topic.
Yeah, so much. I'm going to end this.
I'm pretty sure
we
it's
can
not
bring it up again on Rum and Coke. I'll probably have that in 6 o'clock or 5:30.
Yeah, can I make one announcement?
Yes, make your announcement. Absolutely.
Cool. So I just finished a poll I did on Twitter just finished, and the poll was essentially, here's what it said. Considering recording reading out loud some articles and or legal documents being the non sequitur ones, for people who don't have time to read them or just aren't fans of reading, but want the info. Thoughts? And the answer was yes, help, or brackets, nah, let them suffer. So 84% said yes and 16% said no. So I guess I'm going to be doing some recording of reading through different news articles for information as well as the non sequitur legal documents.
There you go.
That's pretty cool.
I'll make a little public service announcement too from Red's Rhetoric. He says, I've noticed a lot of YouTube Google accounts getting hacked recently, so do yourself a favor and update those passwords. Google also has 2-step verification for added security. Set it up because if your account gets hacked, Google would not be the most helpful. I have strong passwords for pretty much everything, and I also have 2-party verification for everything that's possible. I highly recommend it. It's nearly impossible with 2-party verification. So, yeah.
Unless they somehow get a hold of your mobile device or whatever.
Which is sitting right here in my hand.
And also probably recommend, if you want that extra level of security, when there's a security question, if you have a good enough memory, make it something that isn't related to the question. So if it's like, what's your mother's maiden name? Pineapple pizza.
Just some random nonsense. Yeah, I personally dislike the questions because they're trying to rescue their abdication of proper password form. They've gone with this weird thing where they want a capital, a lowercase, a number, all that nonsense. But then they let people make really short passwords and actually put an upper limit, which is just retarded.
See, I like things I can remember. I mean, like almost all my passwords are basically Cheshire has a big ass. So it's just something that I can remember and easy to so. By the way, that's her password too. It seems. Yeah.
Hold on. Did you just call my ass easy?
I know. I said big. Yeah. I don't know the difficulty level, but she's like
generally
expert.
speaking, you're far better at going with longer than more complex. But almost nobody advocates that for some reason.
Get ready to start drinking here soon. So we'll be back in maybe about an hour or so. But thanks for watching this, guys. Like I said, these are conversations I really do enjoy. We usually have them later in the night, but I'd like to thank Michael from the Canadian podcast coming in. We'll probably be on his podcast. Probably, I don't know, soon, because we've been on a few times. And I support podcasts.
Previous recordings are good.
Yeah, he does a really good job. There's a couple podcasts out there that I think do a really good job, and send some love over to the Canadian podcast. All right, guys, end this, and we will call it a day here. Yay!
Stay healthy, everybody.
Don't get sick.
See you later.